Good morning. This is Rene Zambrano. It's January 28th, 2001. We are interviewing Mr. Andrew Aguirre for the U.S. Latino and Latina World War II Oral History Project. We're here in Chula Vista at Mr. Aguirre's house, and we're going to be interviewing this morning. We're going to interview him this morning to get his experiences during World War II and the Korean War. Before we begin, Mr. Aguirre, we would like to tell you that we're appreciative that you have volunteered your time to share your valuable experiences of World War II in Korea. So let's begin this interview by tracing back your life, your family in that order, from that perspective. So,
Okay, well, my dad came from Yawalika, Guadalajara, and my mother lived right here in close to El Paso. They got married. My dad was 16 years older than my mom. In fact, my dad was my grandmother's age when they got married. In 1928, we moved here to Chula Vista, California. And I was raised right here and by the bay, the San Diego, the Western Salt Company, they call it La Salina. We call it the Salt Works. I went to school in Otay. I graduated from Otay and then went to junior high in Chula Vista. But I only got as far as the 8th grade because my dad used to take us up to the valley, San Joaquin Valley, to pick anything that was available at the season. It was like plums, of San Jose plums and Gilroy tomatoes, and then in Madera we picked a lot of grapes, and in Fresno area we picked a lot of cotton. And I was just young, 14, 15 years old. And then later on that's why when we came back, it was too late for me I had lost too much time in school, so I just ignored it and didn't go. And it seemed like nobody cared whether I went or not. So I was just roaming around, and some Japanese guys gave me a job in their farm, minimum wage. And I think at that time it was only about 3 hours.
that was your
3 hours. Yes, right here in Chula Vista. Yeah.
What was the original reason that your parents moved to California?
Well, I think my grandmother on my father's side had a big influence on that because they moved in to Tijuana from Guadalajara. And I think she was wanting my dad to be near her, see, which of course didn't sit too well with my mother because that meant my mother had to leave all her relatives over there to come with here. I think that was the motivating factor. That's why we came to here. And my dad, yeah, I don't know what his level of education was, but he never he never got beyond stoop labor. You know what I mean? Hauling, cutting, and all that stuff.
And your dad was born in Guadalajara.
Guadalajara, Yawalika.
Yeah. And what was the what year did he come to the United States?
I think he married. I think it was in the 1900s because they were married and see my mom was born in the 1900s when the what do you call it, the century was starting, and she got married when 16, so it must have been around 1916, 1915.
Then both your
My dad came to El Paso. He came through Juarez.
and your mom was born.
She was there already.
Already.
Yes. She was only about 15, 16 years old when they married.
Was your dad did your dad leave the Mexico due to the revolution by any chance?
That might have contributed toward it. It was just starting, I guess, but I think the system of life over there contributed a lot because it was at that time it was a lot of peonage system. Some big landowners and the peons, and I think that's what contributed toward it. I never did. Like I said, Chicanos they don't get too close, so I never did have a chance to talk to my dad about it. Yeah. Something fell down over there.
So you were born in Texas, and then came to California.
Yes.
How old were you when you came to California?
3 years old.
3 years old.
I was born in 1925. We came here in 1928
Mm-hmm.
to California. No, that's where I was raised.
And you started at what school here?
The Old Thai Grammar
It
School.
was the Old Thai Grammar School.
Mm-hmm.
And you attended there until...
Well, I was there for the full term, which was about 6 years.
Okay.
Then I went to junior high, got as far as the 8th grade. And that was it.
Tell us about your school years. What was a typical school day like for you?
Well, a typical school day was you got up in the morning and we had to walk, which was from the Western Salt Company to Otay, which is over a mile. Yeah. So you get up, and you have frijoles and tortillas and you take off. And 50% of the time I didn't have any shoes. And I got pictures where they took on me and the other kids, and we don't wear shoes. We weren't wearing shoes. Okay, when I went into school, when I started school, I didn't know how to speak English. I mean, it was in my house or my household, we spoke nothing but Spanish. And so when I got to school, it was a little rough because you couldn't understand the people. And then another thing that made it kind of rough is that they forbade you from speaking Spanish. If they caught you speaking Spanish, they would punish you in some form. I know a couple of times I don't know, I forgot whether it was for speaking Spanish or for saying dirty words. But they washed my mouth out with soap, laundry soap.
Okay.
And another time, the principal there, Mrs. Finney, she used to have a little like a storeroom. So if you'd misbehave, she'd take you in there and wallop you with some rubber hose. Of course, rubber hose doesn't leave no marks on you. So I think that's what she did. So it was a little rough, And then the first day I went to school, recess, I went down to the bars, the swings, and a couple of toughy guys were out to get me. So I took off for home. And I got home, and of course, what I didn't get over there, my mother applied it, She beat me up. And but later on, I started getting into the rhythm. I assimilated into the school system, and those tough guys afterwards, they were beating quite a few kids up in the minor. Mm-hmm. So what I did, I organized all the guys that got hit. I said, hey, let's get together, and we can take them. We can take that big guy, So in a pack, we jumped that guy and we took care of him, and we took care of some other bullies. That's why, they say about gangs. I think this was where it starts. You have to form a gang to protect yourself. And so we took care of that bully, and we took care of some more. So we were kind of running the school grounds there.
Was this looking back at it, do you think this was a racial thing or issue? And was the school, first of all, predominantly Mexicano or Mexican, or was it a mixture?
No, it was a mixture. We had a lot of Mexicans, of course, predominant. I would say maybe 50%, and then maybe about 20% Japanese, and very little blacks, very little. The rest were Anglos. Mm-hmm. And there was racial stuff involved there, because let's face it, we've been racially picked on since we crossed the border. So that's why as we grow older, you learn to assimilate more. But I think, part of the problem was that the Chicanos were their own worst enemies, because everybody was in a barrio, okay? A barrio. Conocemos a Don Jesús, a Don Jose, and just stuff here. See, so everybody knows everybody else. You feel comfortable in your language, your culture. So when a person tried to leave the barrio and assimilating with Anglos, he was picked on. And le anda lambiendo al gringo ese, se cree muy bueno por este lado. We're our own worst enemies. And so we didn't let anybody, when I say we, I mean the barrio, somebody stepped out of that group. I mean, he was kind of ridiculed. So I think we were our own worst enemies. We didn't know We didn't know that, hey, we got to mix if you're going to go anyplace. We're in this country now. We have to mix with the Anglos. That's all. We have to learn their ways, and that way we can protect ourselves and survive.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why I say I think we were our worst enemies.
The teachers, how were the teachers with the students in school?
Teachers were real good. They were, they were fair. They were fair. I went from the first grade up to the sixth grade, and they only punished me when I gave them some trouble. A lot of it was my fault. One of the things that I had was I didn't take too much crap from anybody after I knew where I was, in my place in the system.
Yeah.
So that's part of the problem.
Were you ever discriminated in school?
I don't recall ever being discriminated. No, no. Even though there was a lot of Mexicans, the teachers didn't discriminate us. As far as I know, I can't remember it too well, but I don't think we were.
What did you do growing up in the city of Chula Vista? What do you do as a young man for fun
Well, you mean for recreation?
or recreation?
For recreation, we used to live in the saltworks, La Salina, everybody called it. And there, of course, we had access to the bay, which we could go fishing or swimming. And then we also had access to another, where the main street is,
Mm-hmm.
Dies. There was a big orchard there, eucalyptus orchard. And we used to go over there and have our fun. And I remember one time we were up there and there was a pack of dogs used to run from where Roar is over there. And we were scared of them. We were scared of them, so we'd climb up a tree, throw branches down at them. So I don't know who got the idea, we don't have to be afraid of them damn dogs, Just take care of them. So we went home and we made bows and arrows, real sharp nails on the point, And then we made some spears, So we were a little primitive, but so after we got our weapons, I mean, we weren't afraid of nothing. We'd go in there and then dogs come around, man, and all you have to do is get one of them and the rest of them will run away, So that's what it was. We had a lot of rubber. There was a barn down there where we had a lot of rubber fights. We'd have one party in the loft, one party down below, and we would oppose each other. So, and sometimes we walked all the way down to Imperial Beach and then walked back. So,
What was it typical going to school? You mentioned that you went to school and you had no shoes. Was it very common for other kids growing up? Or
there was quite a few, even Anglos, that didn't have no shoes. Yeah, they didn't. There's quite a few of them. Yeah. The girls all wore shoes, of course. Then in school, there was always a lot of fights. You have to establish status, I guess, if you want to call it that. And I got into quite a few. Not because somebody called me a dirty name or something. It was for something else. I forgot. You know how kids are.
how about your parents? What did they do for a living?
My dad was mostly, like I said, stoop labor. I hate to use the term stoop, but that's what it was. When he came from El Paso, he started working. This area here there was a lot of Japanese farmers. See, and so they were the only ones that my dad could get work from. So he'd be out there cutting celery or hoeing and all that. Like I say, I don't know. Just my dad, he never got beyond that for some reason. And when I was a kid, I was working with him, cut celery, elapulation, and I managed to work myself up a little bit, and I started driving trucks, driving Caterpillars, and this was one of the reasons they put me in Amtrak's and tanks in the Marine Corps, because I've been driving heavy equipment, So my dad never did. He just, I don't know, he just.
Did he encourage? Did he encourage you to continue your education?
No, they didn't care at that time. Whether the main thing is bring some money in, If you worked, it was real common to give at least half of your pay to the family, and so I think in a way they were more glad to see me go to work than to go to school. you know.
How many family members?
We had 9 altogether.
You were in the middle.
I was third from the top. There were my older brother, my sister, and myself.
Did they graduate from school?
No, I think my older brother only went as far as grammar school, and my other sister, I don't think she finished high school. There were different times then. You know. Excuse me. Sounds like a funeral procession.
Your generation lived through the Great Depression.
It was on the tail end of the Depression, yes, within the 30s.
In the 30s.
Yeah, I was born 25, so I guess the Depression started in 29, up to about the time President Roosevelt came in, then the Depression kind of ended.
How did your family dealt with those times?
Pretty rough, pretty rough. There was jobs were not available. And of course, we've always been doing that kind of work. My dad, you know, they had a lot of competition from across the border. I mean, you can't form a union because they got scabs, you know, that'll work. I mean, they need the money too, just like we do, you know. So that's why they couldn't get too far ahead because they always had those guys over here that come and work. And I think they're still doing that, I'm not sure. But that was pretty rough. I remember one year there, my dad went up north and my older brother to look for work. And then me and I became sort of head of the family then. One of the ways we got by was I would go to ask the Japanese farmers when your crops get a little old, they won't pick them. They want them fresh, you know. So they get a little old. I asked them if I could go in there and pick like string beans, tomatoes, or whatever. They were real nice to me. They said yes. So we were surviving on that for a while. We were surviving on anything we can get a hold of. It was real common to go out in the meadows and look for mushrooms. Yeah, I think if I remember, one time we even had some mud hens to eat, which we caught with our bow and arrows.
Now, so your father's work was impacted due to the Great Depression?
No, I think it was education and being foreign in this country, and then also the fact that that's all he did over there. That's all he knew how to do here. You know, like my brother ran a family tree down to 1810, and in it, my grandfather, my father's father, registered himself as a herder, herrero. You know, so that explains what my father what kind of work he did. And a lot of his education, lack of knowing English, of course, always hampers you. You know, you can't assimilate with the American society. So not knowing English, being used to the kind of work they did down here, and of course the barrio kept you in there, you know. And so I think that contributed a lot. And then let's face it, a lot of us Mexicans, we regard ourselves as machos, you know, and machos within ourselves, within our group. But when it comes time to be a macho in another culture, we're not too good at it, you know. We sort of, at least what I've seen, we kind of use we humble ourselves, you know, because we're not used to that culture, you know. We don't know, we can't understand it, so we kind of humble ourselves, and that hurts us. That hurts us.
So your father followed the crop season?
Yes. Yeah, we would work right here in San Diego, and at that time also the Western Salt Company was, they were digging out all the salt from the salt beds with shovel. So it was a seasonal work, but it was hard work, shoveling that salt. And then later on they brought some mechanized stuff, But he would work there, then he would work with the Japanese, and then during summer, which was very helpful for him because when the family went up to pick grapes, the whole family participated. I mean, he would never, even the little young ones, you know.
So all your family went with your parents, or everybody went together?
Yes, we all went in a little truck we had, and everybody participated, you know, going out there picking cotton or grapes or whatever, you know. Of course, the older guys like myself, we were more or less the main contributors to the house. But when you get all the 9 kids, you know, no, my dad, because they used to pay by piecework. If you pick grapes, you had a roll, and if you that roll at the end, you count your trays and you put 266 Aguirre. And so if payday come around, the guy would go at the end of the row and check, well, Aguirre got this, and Aguirre got that, and Gonzalez here, Castro here, you know. And that's how. So that's why the family was important to my father to work. You know, education was something that it was very sparse. They would rather have us working than going to school. Going to school, we don't bring money. We just make added cost. You know, we have to buy shoes and stuff like that. So,
What other events were taking place during the 30s that you can remember?
well, during the 30s, like I said, we were going to school, and we don't. The home that we lived in was about. It was very small, very small. It was the room must have been, I guess maybe 2/3 of the width of that, which would make it about 10, 20, maybe 25 feet this way, 25 feet square. We had a little kitchen, and the whole family slept in that room. The parents, of course, they slept in bed, and the rest of us, we slept on the floor. Yeah, we slept on the floor, and we had an outhouse. That we know no such thing as indoor, and you had a faucet outside. That's where you got your water. In the outhouse, of course, and I remember that real well. And it seemed like my younger brothers were always born in winter. And so here, Andres, ve trae el doctor, you know. So I'd go there to the Japanese place, and they were the only ones that had a phone. I'd call the doctor to come over, and the doctor would chew us all out of the house, you know. And he was cold, but we were out there, and he'd go in there and help deliver the baby. And then when the baby was delivered, then we could come back inside the house. And it was a little rough,
So your brothers were born at home?
Yeah, yeah. My I guess 3 sisters were born home, and 3 brothers.
Mm-hmm. And that it was,
Well, everybody was really born at home.
That was common then.
It was real common in Texas, due to the distance between doctors and hospitals and stuff like that. They used a lot of midwives. You know, the midwife would come and help deliver the baby, but which was not too good because if the baby had a defect, she didn't know anything about it. You know, I had one brother that died with a birth defect. I don't know. He had like a real mushy hole in his head, right here, and I don't know whatever happened. And he got that. I don't know how, but anyway, he died from that. And and at that time too, it's kind of interesting. I mentioned in the book, when you died, we didn't have mortuaries. You know, we didn't say, oh, llévalo a la mortoria, you know, and we'll have our services there and vigil and whatever. Velorio, they called it. No, they'd bring like my brother, we had him on top of the dinner table, you know, and everybody was around, of course, and all the men were outside. And mostly the ones that stayed inside were the women. And then, you know, after it got tired, then they'd take off. The next day we'd bury him. But that was real common. No, mortuaries were not used by the Mexicans too well. Mostly because they didn't have access to them, and also they didn't have the money.
How old was your brother when he died?
Oh, he must have been, well, he was a little bit older than me, and I can just remember grabbing the top of the table and looking like this, you know. trying to see what the heck was going on. So he must have been around, I would say maybe 5 years old.
What year was this?
This was 5 years old. I would have made him about, that was before we came here. Yeah, so about 1930, 1929. I hate to think that I remember that because it doesn't make sense. I came here in 28 and he died over there. So I must have really been young, you know. And he was a couple of, yeah, to remember, and your mind is kind of funny. Sometimes it'll remember things from way back, but I can't remember where I left my pencil.
It's very true.
Yeah.
During the 1930s, during the Great Depression, without the unemployment going on, very little jobs, the government started the repatriation program with when a lot of Mexicans were being repatriated back to Mexico, either voluntarily or by.
Well, from what I understand, my knowledge of history was that I forgot. I think it was Camacho, the president of Mexico at that time. Okay, he was promising land to a lot of the Mexicans in this area. See, and a lot of them went back on their own. Not much as for repatriation, but they went back on their own because they were going to get land. Mm-hmm. And as you know, land is land. Well, if you don't have money to work it, I mean, mm-hmm. you got nothing. Mm-hmm. And that's where they got kind of sidetracked a little bit. And as far as the repatriation, I don't recall too much of that. There might have been some, but I don't know. Mm-hmm. But I know that the Mexican government contributed to a lot of Mexicans from here going back. Mm-hmm. They promised some land, Mm-hmm. And of course, with land, you got to have tractors, you got to have horses, you got to have this, you got to have that, money, to buy seed and stuff, and they didn't have it. Mm-hmm. So in the end, it hurt them because they were here, and then they went over there, and if whatever legal grounds they had to stay here or come back, they couldn't come back no more. A lot of them had to stay, forced to stay over there, or else jump the fence. Yeah.
So, you were working with your dad, following the crop season. Mm-hmm. Stopped going to school after the 8th grade. So you remained working with your parents and helping your parents?
No, after I got to about 15 years old, I was very fortunate that I met some Anglos. Old Bentley, his name was, and he told me, he says, Andy, why don't you come work for me instead of cutting salary there? You're a pretty good nailer. You could nail boxes. And he says, we'll go up, we'll travel around, and you work for me, and I promise you work, and you can make a lot more money you're making here. So I went with Old Bentley, and we would go down to L.A. area, make boxes for salary, and we went up to Idaho, make boxes for lettuce, or boxes for tomato, and I kind of liked it because I was independent, Of course, our living conditions weren't the best, maybe a tent or something, and you used to have to use a packing house as toilets and whatever water you needed, you had to get it up there. But I liked it. I really loved it because I was independent and I had my moolah coming in, Of course, I was still sending 50% home. Mm-hmm. But I worked with Old Bentley till more or less till I got called in the Marine Corps. Mm-hmm. And the reason I was working in Bentley, then I went to work with Jacob Rogers. That was a big farm firm here. And then when I was working for Jacob Rogers, they had and during the war they had what they call an exemption. You were exempted if you were contributing toward the war effort. Okay, so they took out an exemption on me, and I didn't know it till I went to work for Old Bentley. Then they just cut me out like that, and I got my notice to go into service. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's when one of my friends, in fact, it was my brother's brother-in-law. He joined the Marine Corps, and he used to come and visit us from Camp Pendleton. and he would tell me about the Marine Corps, all the activities and stuff like that. And he told me, are you going to go into service? I said, well, I think I'll be called pretty soon. He says, well, Pete, you don't want to go in the Army. Go in the Marine Corps, man. It's a lot better, and besides, you'll be right here in San Diego until you go overseas.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. I went and joined the Marine Corps.
What year was this?
This was 44.
44?
Mm-hmm. 1944. Joined the Marine Corps, and I really loved it after a while. At first, I hated it. I hate those robots, hip, holy, holy, wear the hat down here. They talk to you, they bring their face right up, practically spitting at you, and stuff like that, But gradually you start to develop a sense of unity, a sense of importance, because you're part of something big, And at first, where you hate it, you kind of start taking pride in yourself and your buddies, your platoon.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while, you hear the rhythm of the slapping of guns, Well, you love that. It's just something gung ho or something. I don't know. In fact, I'll tell you one thing. When I got released, they asked me if the Chinese had brainwashed me, When I got released from the prisoner of war camp in Korea, I said, no, the Marine Corps beat them to it. Yeah. So I was in San Diego till, I went through boot camp right here, Marine Corps Recruit Depot, and then we got sent to Guadalcanal. But there was no battle going on. Guadalcanal was secured in 43. We got there in 44. What they were doing, they were forming the 6th Marine Division. Can you believe it? 6 Marine Divisions. Now we only got 1 or 2.
Wow.
Yeah. And then about that time, the 1st Division had returned for Peleliu. Peleliu was pretty rough. They lost a lot of Amtraks. They lost a lot of people. So they took us from Guadalcanal over to the Russell Islands, and that's when I joined the 1st Amtrak Battalion. From there, we trained, then we made the landing in Okinawa. We made the landing on Easter Sunday, 1945, and shortly after Okinawa, the war was over, and they sent us to China, like I told you before, to accept the surrender and repatriate all the Japanese and military and civilians alike back home, back to Japan.
So your actual first battle, your first big battle was in Okinawa?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Was that the first time you seen a massive or many people that died in combat?
It's the first time. Well, I've seen some in Guadalcanal. One incident I recall was when we were going to, I don't know why, if somebody said there was some bananas inside the island, and you had to go through a lot of jungle. Mm-hmm. And we came to this spot, and we saw, there was only about 3 of us, we saw this group of Japanese soldiers laying there. Of course they've been there like about a year, and they were fully clothed. They had their webs on, the web gear, and some of the helmets were knocked off. They had holes in them, And that's when I first saw death at a grand scale. So apparently they got killed and they couldn't retrieve them because for some reason they weren't taken out.
And it was many.
Yeah, there was at least 15, 20 of them there. Then later on, when we got out of the jungle, we came to this, some holes in the ground. I don't know what the holes were for originally, but now it's full of skulls and bones and stuff. So apparently the Marines didn't want to bother burying them, and they threw them in this hole. And I remember one guy, he jumped in a hole, and like an idiot, he started looking at all the skulls, make sure they didn't have no gold teeth, And he couldn't find it. Of course, somebody already beat him to it. Anyway, he got one of the skulls and still had a little gristle on it. He took it back to the camp. That first sergeant saw that. He chewed him out. He said, "Get that thing out of here." And anyway, that's when I started seeing death a little bit. And when I saw death at major scale was in Okinawa. We had a big battle, and then we also had the monsoons too. The monsoons is rain, 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 rain. and we couldn't go in and get the dead Marines out. So finally they calmed down a little bit and they got them out, and I was right alongside the track and I saw these trucks coming, and they were loaded with dead Marines. And all the only thing was sticking out because the Marines used to wear leggings at the time. There's a field shoe and a legging, and you could see all their leggings, and you could hear the entrails inside. I guess they turn loose or something after you're dead. You know, they wobble around like a water bag. And that's the way they were coming, you know. And you talk about stink. Wow, terrible. That's when I found out we were fighting for real. You know, that was war.
What was your what went through your mind to see so many people?
At that time, I got a little apprehensive and a little scared. Yeah. But then after that, I pulled out of it, okay. And I could say, hell, that could be me right there, you know. But that's what went through my mind. Got apprehensive and felt sad. You know, Marine dies, you feel bad. It's a part of you dies with them. That's what it amounts to. That's why you feel bad. Yeah.
So the battle in Okinawa was very short, but you did engage in a fighting the Japanese.
Well, we were fighting the Japanese, but my function in Okinawa was an Amtrak operator. I could tell you before, because we had been driving heavy equipment, they put me in an Amtrak operator. An Amtrak. And an Amtrak, the main function of an Amtrak is to make the landing. Make the landing, and the reason we use Amtraks is sometimes the coral reefs on the islands, the Navy can't come through. It's too high, and they'll bang those barges. That's what happened in Tarawa. Bang those barges there, and the infantry has to walk to shore, you know, under fire. So the Amtraks would go right up to shore. Then our function was in Okinawa was to deliver the troops. And you talk about confusion. You probably saw it in the movies. Boats going this way and that way and this way, you know, all kinds of things. But I took in 2 anti-tank guns and the crew. And when they got on board my tractor, I asked them, what the hell is that tackle for, block and tackle? Oh, he says, we're going to land and there's a tree up on a cliff, big high cliff. We're going to use the block and tackle to put our guns up there. Oh, I didn't think nothing about it. And lo and behold, when I hit that beach, there was a tree up there, you know. So it's just a remarkable planning that takes place before a landing. Mm. And after we landed, I dropped the troops off. Then I reported to the beach master. The beach master is the one that coordinates most of the landing, you know, where supplies are going to go, where this is going to go. And he starts giving instructions to say, you, Baker 22, go up to ship 32A and unload him. So you go up to 32A and they bring those big cranes over and dump all this stuff on your tank. And that was our main function. And after that, our function was to take, like in the monsoon, because trucks can't get through, the Amtrak were the only one that can get through, we take stuff up to the lines, you know, and bring out the dead. So, but as far as pulling the trigger, I didn't do much of that. I did a lot of that in Korea, but not in World War II.
So you drove trucks and delivered the soldiers. Was that your duty mainly during Okinawa?
Well, the Amtrak, the previous tractors, yes. My main duty was to get those guys in there. Mm-hmm. And well, the way you do that, you get off the ship, okay, and you got a platoon, let's say a platoon of Amtraks or a company, and each company, each tractor is assigned a number. For instance, like B-22, yellow, okay, yellow 2. That means that you're going to land in Yellow Beach 2, because that's the way they break the beaches. Yellow 1, yellow 2, yellow 3, blue 1, blue 2, everything. So so the guy can look at your tractor and know where you're supposed to be. And the B-22, okay, the second number will be your platoon of tanks, the second platoon. And B, of course, is the company. B company, second platoon, and then the other number will be your position in the platoon, like tank number 3, number 4, number 5, or whatever. Yeah. And it's kind of exciting, really. Yeah, it's really exciting. It's the adrenaline goes up, and I remember before we made the landing. This is just to show you how callous those guys were. Before we made the landing, the bombardment takes place. They're trying to soften them up. Cruisers coming alongside, letting salvos and destroyers going. And we were up on an LST because an LST is where you carry your amphibious track. And I was up there. It was a beautiful day, something like this. The sun was out. And the Navy would always give us good chow before we went in. Steak and eggs, for breakfast. Like the Last Supper. And anyway, I was watching the railing there, watching the bombardment, watching the beach getting splattered. And here comes this old Marine alongside of me. And he said, "Chief." I said, "Yeah." He said, "It's a beautiful day for killing." I said, "What?" "Yeah, it's a beautiful day for clearing, man. Okay, say for killing. Look how bright the sun is and all that stuff. So that goes to show you how callous these guys were. And after they've been over there a while, you bet. I don't know whether I ever got that way or not. But our job was to take the troops in, yes. And then after you get the troops in, you report to the beach master, and he assigns you a ship to unload. Okay, after the landing takes place and all the logistics are ashore, then you start going to the front to deliver supplies and bring that out or whatever. Especially in the monsoon, because it's mud, just mud. Rain, 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 rain.
How long were you in Okinawa before the Japanese surrender?
I was there in Okinawa from April. I think the war ended in August. April, May, June, July, August, yeah. And then we heard that they dropped the atomic bomb. Nobody knew anything about the atomic bomb. Big bomb, it made big noise. Shortly after that, we heard that the Japanese had surrendered, you know. And but you couldn't tell that because our environment was still war-like, we were. And anyway, they told us Japanese surrendered, and then after a while they came down and said, so we moved out of the combat area, moved into rest areas. Then when the war was over, they came and told us that if you got points by being overseas, so many points for so many years and blah, blah. The more points you had, the better your chances of coming home. If you didn't have too many points, then you didn't have no priority to come home. And I didn't have too many because, like I said, I got to the tail end of the war. So they sent me to a tank battalion because in China, we didn't need tracks. We needed tanks. So they sent me to a tank battalion, and I went with the tank battalion to Tianjin, China, and with the First Marine Division.
So you went there right after the war. That was to
the war ended in August. Yes, the war ended in August of 1945, if I'm not mistaken, and we got into China in November, August, September, October, a little bit from it.
And that was when the official Japanese surrender took place there?
Yes, in that area.
In that area.
But Tokyo and all these other areas, they had already surrendered. Like I said, we went there for the primary reason was that trying to beat the communists in there so we could take their weapons. And otherwise, if they got the weapons, they'd be stronger.
What was the situation there like?
It was just like coming into a big city. Tianjin was by a river, and the river was about 20 miles long. And of course, it started or it ended in the ocean. So when we left Okinawa, we were already prepared because we went, I think, on what you call LSMs, landing ship medium, and they have flat bottom. So we could maneuver the river. No big ships can get in there. So we went on LSMs, and we had our tanks on the landing barges. We went all the way up to top, and it was just like you couldn't tell there was a war going on. Everything was just like the local people were still doing their thing, whatever it was. But then when they saw us coming, I mean, they were really happy to see us.
Good reaction?
Oh, beautiful reaction.
Something that sticks up, something that you remember?
Oh, yeah. Everybody was trying to touch us. You know, they got a big touch, just a big charge of the touching, you know, and patting your back, and they couldn't do enough to show their pleasure. Yeah.
How did that make you feel?
Oh, it makes you feel great, you know, the conquering hero. Yeah, that makes you feel real good.
So you stay there for how long?
I was there a year.
And then you come back home?
I was there a year, and I came home, got discharged, and after I got discharged, I went back to work for the Jacob Rogers, and I don't know, so the Marine Corps had changed me. It changed me.
Tell us how.
Yeah, it just, my outlook was different. It says, I can do better than this job, you know. Look at all the people going in the cars. I was working on Sundays, and they're all going someplace, you know. I can do better than this. And that's when I decided to get out. I was going to do no more stoop labor. So I joined, I was lucky that I got a job with General Dynamics. You know, I kind of had to bluff my way through. I told him I was a mechanic. And when I got to the interview, the guy says, how much do you know about mechanics? I said, not very much. But I figured if I got this close, you could find a job for me. He says, okay. So he put me in doing one of the dirtiest work you do in a paint shop. Stripping off old paint. I mean, you had to wear a face shield and a rubber apron, and rubber gloves, and you had to scrape that paint off, you know, and dirty job.
From scrape paint off from?
Yeah, parts that were rejected after they were painted, they had to rework them or whatever. Then after that,
What was your official title there?
well, I don't even think I was a painter. I guess a painter assistant or something. But after that, we used to have what they call a barrel house where we store all our paint and mixed up all our paint, did all the mixing there. And the guy quit. And they didn't want to take these other guys because they were good spray painters, you know. So I was dispensable. So they told me, you want the job? I said, sure, anything to get out of this. That paint stripper hit your face, man. It just burns. So I started there, and I work there, and then I was doing that work when the Korean War broke out. And the Korean War broke out in, I think, June of 25th, I'm not mistaken. And we were quick, at that time, okay, when I got out of World War II in 1948, I joined the Marine Corps Active Reserve. So when the Korean War broke out, all these reserve units were quickly activated. And of course, mine was no different. We were activated real quick. I was still working with General Dynamics in July, I guess. And we got activated, went down to Camp Pendleton and got our tanks and this and that. And we were hurry. Everybody was in a hurry. We were working around the clock, getting the tanks ready, taking them out of Cosmoline, loading them up aboard the Liberty ship. And we were working around the clock. And to make a long story short, an hour, and on September 16th, we made the Incheon landing. That's how fast we were going. And another thing, too, we had been training with M4 tanks. And so when we went to Korea, they gave us M26s. Nobody had driven an M26, fired our M26 or anything. So between here and Japan, because we got to Kobe, Japan, and from there we combat loaded to go to Korea. Everybody, the manuals were the only thing we were studying. You know, you couldn't go out there and shoot them. But so when we landed in Korea, everybody was green at their job. You know, everybody was green. I remember I was so green. I was a gunner. They made me a gunner. I was so green that we were pushing, and we were pushing with the infantry, you know, going down the road. Pretty soon we got a call out, tank, getting a lot of heavy fire about 2 o'clock. Can you help us out? And the guy says, because the tanks have what they call a radio telephone on the back of the tank. So the infantry, all they had to do is pick up the phone and talk to the crew inside the tank. And I said, and then tank commander said, Chief, yeah, see the hat over there? Yeah, get it. And I was turning around like this. And I had already had my sights on it, but then I wasn't sure what he said, so I said, what? When I went like this, there was a manual, firing mechanism manual, That gun goes off. Big flash comes out of the breech, and a big shell ejects. So, oh, I thought we got hit or something. So that goes to show you how green we were.
Mm-hmm.
But I already have my sights on it, so the tank commander said, "That was beautiful. You got it."
We did.
Yeah, but I kept thinking, what if there would have been infantry in front? I'd have wiped them out.
Yeah.
So training has a lot to do with, and we didn't have the opportunity to get trained because all the UN were cornered down in Busan, a little perimeter there. So we had to give them some relief real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we went overseas. In Incheon, and then the landing in Incheon was a little different because we were already in tanks. So we just got off of tanks, and then we started pushing toward the capital of South Korea, which was Seoul. And in between Incheon and Seoul, we had a lot of engagements, scrimmages.
Is there one battle that stands out in your mind more?
There's one that bothers me a little bit.
Can you tell us about it?
Yeah. It still bothers me. What it was that after we took Seoul, we had the high ground, and that night the Koreans, they charged us. They made an attack, and they're weird. You know how the Japanese used to say "banzai"? Well, the Koreans would say "manse." From what I understand, it means victory. Manse! Blah, 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 everything started, And we were right on the pass because we were on the road, and we had Marine gunners over here, machine gunners. And war is funny sometimes. And they were splattering. We were waiting in case they had armored mechanism before we went into action, Meantime, the infantry's taken care of. And then we heard a voice. It was nighttime. We heard a voice in the dark say, "Hello, Joe. Thank you very much. Hello, Joe. Thank you very much." And here comes this Korean old man, kind of old. And he's got something basket on his head. And he was coming down the road, and the Marines were hollering, "Halt! Halt!" They were slapping slugs right in his feet. And they said, "Halt, halt." And he just kept on coming. Said, "Hello, Joe. Thank you very much. Thank you very much." And then, man, that guy must have been desperate to come to those lines like that. Anyway, last I heard of him, he was up in the dark someplace hollering, "Hello, Joe. Thank you very much." But he was lucky. He didn't get killed or nothing. Then after that, the next morning I was laying on top of the tank there, and then a Marine patrol came by. They had gone into the village and were coming out. And I said, "Hey, what's going on in there?" Oh, he said, "Oh, bunch of dead gooks there." And the other kid was with me. He said, "Any souvenirs around?" "Oh, yeah." He said, "A lot of rifles and crap like that if you want to go get them." I said, "I'm not going in there." And then my loader, he was the one. He said, "Maybe we should go in there. The war's about over. We're not going to get no souvenirs. We got to take souvenirs home." I said, "You think I'm going to go jeopardize my butt for a lousy rifle?" And he said, "Well, are you scared? Are you scared to go in there, Chief?" I said, "Shut up." Then I felt like bopping him when the police says, "Are we going or aren't we?" Okay. Grab the Thompson submachine gun. You know what Thompson is. They're automatic weapons.
Okay.
And I said, "Get a couple of grenades, and let's go. We'll see if there's a couple of guys want to go with it." So Provencio went with me, and there was another guy. There was about 4 of us. We went into the village, and now our lines are over here, and we're beyond the lines. We're not supposed to be there.
So you were violating.
We're biting our military standards from that. We got in there, and first thing you know, this South Korean, he said, "Oi, oi, Ruski." He said, that's what they all used to call the North Koreans, Ruskis, for Russian. Ruski pointed to a house, and then
Ruskis
Ruski, yeah,
for Russian.
yeah, that was their word for communism. Russia affiliated with the North Korean system, so they call them Ruskis. And we went there, and I saw the guy, But oh yeah, before we went in there, we went through there was a big, large fence, and I said, whoever's in there's got to be waiting for us. I know, So I got the Thompson, swept the fence about this high where I figured if anybody's standing, it's going to get hit. And about that time, I opened the gate, real cautious, like going in there. The civilians were in back of me, and one of them had one of these old muskets. It looked like a Civil War musket. And I'm going, taking my time, real cautious, and all of a sudden, wham! I looked over there, the guy had fired the weapon accidentally. I said, God, I grabbed the weapon, I threw it up there, Then me and this other guy went in there, my loader. And this is the part that kind of gets me because the North Korean, the enemy, he was in a corridor, and he was over there, and he had a grenade in his hand. And we told him to come out, we hollered, koi, 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 Japanese, because, see, the Koreans were under the Japanese so many years that they were forced to learn the Japanese language, so they all knew Japanese. In fact, the interpreters we had over there were Nisis, Japanese Americans. And he didn't want to come out. So I went in at him, and chopped him down. It's kind of funny, they'd bounce because them 45 slugs tearing right into him. He went down, and then my loader comes up, and he's got a 45, and it's an 8-round clip. You go, pow, 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 right at the guy's head. And blood, brains, and head matter splattered all over. I said, what the hell you do that for? He says, I want to make sure he's dead. Then after a while, I said, people get callous. And he said, man, Chief, that was great. Let's go get another one. I said, hell with you, I'm going back. I ain't going to stay out here anymore. Then on the way back, I saw a blood trail. Blood, you know what a blood trail is. It's somebody wounded leaving blood behind. And it went right into this one shack. I still had the Thompson. And then I kicked the door open, in John Wayne style. And there's these two civilians, a man and a woman, who were attending a North Korean soldier. He was laying down, but he had a big wound on his chest. I mean, blood was just coming out. I don't know when he got hit or what. And then my loader said, get him, Chief, get him. I said, no. He's gone, man. Just forget about it. Forget about it. And when I opened the door, those civilians and the soldier, man, their face, you could just neck of terror looking at me in the face, And that's when kind of...
They thought that you were going to kill him, maybe?
Mm-hmm. I thought I was going to get him.
Civilians helping
yeah, they were supposed to be South Koreans. See, they were helping the enemy. And when I closed the door anyway, right before I closed the door, they all bowed at me like this, I closed the door and we went back. Then we got chewed out for going in there in the first place. But I always remember that one. But there was other ones, That one because, I burned guys with a 90 millimeter cannon we had. You see a group of guys running across a field or something, you open up and you blow them away, burn them. But it's a lot different than seeing a guy face to face, burning a guy right face to face like me and you are right now. So that stayed with me for a long time. And I kept dreaming I was in this meat locker, and this guy, this figure, he was running around, and I was chasing him, and he was trying to ward me off from giving him the, what they call it, coup de guerre or something, where you finish him off. Mm-hmm. And I'd wake up, scared. That stayed with me for a long time. I finally got over it. But those personal things, like personal face-to-face and burning, is a lot different than, like, you talk about these Air Force guys, they're way up in the air, 10,000 feet. They don't know what they did, They just drop the bomb, go back. That's a lot different with ground-to-ground forces. You see them face-to-face.
So yeah, this was after your the UN was after this incident, or after you reached the South Korean border. Mm-hmm. You continued forward.
Yeah, MacArthur at that time thought it was a It was a golden opportunity to unify all of Korea instead of having North and South Korea. So we started, we got on boats again. We went back to Incheon, loaded up, and then we made another landing in Wonsan, and that was fouled up too because they didn't know that the harbor was mined. So we're going back and forth while the minesweepers clean up the harbor. And then when we landed, the South Koreans had already gone through the town, you know. You know who was waiting for us there? Bob Hope. It was really embarrassing. Bob Hope waiting for us right there. Anyway, he had a show and he was really making fun of us, you know. But it was all right. Then from there, we moved up to the Chosin Reservoir, finally winding up in the Chosin Reservoir, a place called Coterie.
Where's it at down there?
See. There's some them, and I think up here is the Chosin Reservoir.
Okay.
They call it the Kwanjin or something reservoir. And we wound up there. In order to get up there, we had to go through this narrow road like I showed you in the pictures where you couldn't do nothing. Mm-hmm. And we were up there when we got the word that the Chinese had come into the war, you know. And the Chinese have always claimed that they came into the war because they had just got through beating Chiang Kai-shek in 1949. And they didn't want the Americans to be near that close, you know, because we had been supporting the nationalists. They didn't want the Americans that close. That's why they came in, they said. But everybody ignored them, you know. Even some ROKs was the Republic of Korea soldiers, ROKs they used to call them. They got some prisoners and they showed them, you know, hey, the Chinese are in. You know, they're coming into the war. They're already in here. And they got prisoners, nobody believed them. MacArthur was, I hate to say it, but if I would have seen him now, I probably would have fragged him. You know, he caused a lot of misery. Everybody hailed him as a genius, a hero. I don't.
Why?
Because for one thing, he put us in a position where the whole 10th Corps and the 1st Marine Division were just about wiped out. If it had not been for the spirit of the Corps, I guess, or what the way the Marines fought, they would have got wiped out. Because we were up there surrounded in 3 little pockets, and the army was already down in Pyongyang. You know, we were left alone up there. We had no business going up there, and our supply routes were too long, you know. And Marines weren't supposed to go in the mountains and fight like that. Well, we're beachhead guys, you know. We go in there and take the beach and then let the army take over. Anyway, he caused a lot of misery. So I blame him for all the guys we lost up there, which we didn't have to lose them. He just got ambitious and he said, the Chinese aren't coming in. He said, besides, my Air Force can take care of them. You know, his Air Force, he didn't know that the Chinese don't fight like Americans. I mean, the Americans, we go on trucks and we fight on the road. So something happens, we get off the road and we take the hill or something. But the Chinese, I respect them for this. A lot of people say, anyway, I respect them because they come through mountains, they come over hills, they come through valleys and villages. They're foot soldiers, masses of them. So they don't have to depend on the road. You can be on the road and they can encircle you and you don't know it. And then when you try to get out, they got a roadblock. So they really, we estimated, or the higher-ups underestimated the Chinese capability. Yeah, we can think of the airplanes. The Chinese were in Korea about a month before they made their attack, and if they hadn't made the attack, they would never have been detected. You know, that's how camouflage discipline they use. You know, and they're tough. In South Korea and North Korea, up in the reservoir, we had an Air Force, we had a Navy, we had artillery, and we had not the perfect, but winter clothing. The Chinese, all he had was, can you imagine in 30 degrees below zero wearing tennis shoes? And they didn't have no gloves. They didn't have no artillery, no air force. And they could, the worst part, they couldn't make no fires to warm themselves up because it would let out smoke and our airplanes would come right in on them, you know. So they had a real tough guys. And I respect them for that. Their discipline, self-discipline, where they can go nights. We were marching all night. After they caught us, we would march all night. And those guys are just marching right alongside of us, you know, from sundown to sunup. So I respect them for their discipline, you know. And they never question it. They never question what they're going through. I mean, if it would have been a Marine or something go through there, man, he'd write his congressman, you know, and his congressman would do something about it. But the Chink don't. They just take it there. That's the way they live all their lives.
Strong people.
Oh, they're not big. They're small, but they're real wiry. Real wiry. One time we were going up this hill, and after we were prisoners, and we had a ox cart. Ox was pulling a cart, and you wouldn't believe it, but the ox gave way. He gave way before we did. He just dropped, and he wouldn't move. You know, they tried to get him to move, but he wouldn't move. And I told myself, God, we outwalked that ox. That's pretty good accomplishment, you know. Yeah. But they're tough. They're tough. And after I got caught,
tell me about that incident when you got caught.
Okay.
What was taking place?
Well, we were the tail end of a column coming out. The whole division was coming out, and we were the tail end. In our transmission,
coming out meaning
trying to get to the city of Hungnam, where the Navy was waiting to evacuate us. Mm-hmm. And we were on the tail end because we had a transmission leak, and they were afraid that if we broke down, we were going to block all the vehicles coming in back of us, you know. So it made sense that they put us on the last tank, the last one and there was a little mixed up there because we were supposed to have infantry support coming with us, and somehow the infantry got all ahead of us and left our tankers behind. There was a mixed up, but everything was a mixed up there, of course. The weather, 30 degrees below zero, wow, snow, ice. The roads were packed with ice, that black ice. And I was driving, and that tank was slipping and sliding, hard to get traction.
Was the UN and U.S. Military ready to fight this war, do you think?
I'm sorry?
Do you think, from your opinion, do you think that the U.S. and UN were ready to fight this war, considering the climate?
Oh, no, we weren't ready. We weren't ready. A lot of people say that the UN, like England, the Turks, they were real good. You know, they were real good fighters compared to the United States. And the reason they look good and they were good was because they were the elite of the country. Like British, I mean, I still know some British commandos, you know, British Commando Marines. And so they're the elite. I mean, they're professional fighters. And while us, we had conscripts and reserves, you know, untested personnel. Untested personnel. So, no, we weren't ready. Like I said, we had some British with us, British commandos, and I still keep in contact with them. And it's kind of nice to get with the bloody blokes.
Something called
Yeah.
bloody blokes.
Blokes.
Why?
I don't know. It's just a standard. Bloke is a standard saying in the British area. I see if I can see how close I can come without saying dirty words. Anyway, I'd say, "Hey Murphy, how you doing?" And he says, "F lovely, old so and so. How you doing?" They're great guys, great bunch of Marines. Yeah. So, but that's one of the reasons that they stood out more than us, because we were untested. And these guys had fought. The British had fought in Malaysia. They had fought, and they were professionals. Mm-hmm. The tour of a British Marine is 12 years, the first year, you know. So all of them are really career guys. And after he's been 12 years in there. Yeah. Well, anyway, getting back to the incident, we were coming down, and all of us, the convoy was stop and go, and then it got dark, and we were driving with our lights on, the hatch open, and then I was waiting for the column to move, and it didn't move. It didn't move. I said, oh, hell's something wrong, Didn't move. But you're trained not to abandon your tank, or you stay with it until you get the word to abandon or move out. Okay. So then a lot of firing broke out, a lot of yelling, and tracer fire. It was nighttime. Tracer fire was lighting up the place. And then the Chinks attacked us. And when they attacked us, I closed the hatch, the driver's hatch, and we were inside there and still waiting for the column to move. And then I noticed that my light went out on the transmission. We lost oil, lost power. I hit the gas, but nothing moved, So anyway, by this time the Chinese are all over us. I mean, they were like fleas on a dog. They were taking all our supplies for one thing, because they were hard up. They were really hard up. They were taking our sleeping bags and everything away. Someone were poking in the periscopes trying to open them up. And that's when I got the idea. I told, I asked where the tank commander was. They said, he's gone, he bugged out. That's what happened. So I took over. I was a corporal then. I took over command. And I got into the turret, and yeah, there they were, all the Chinks around us. I said, well, we got to get out of here, guys, before the daylight comes. We use the night as cover. So then I told the drivers, I told them to fire the 90 millimeter, because once you fire that thing, the recoil and all the big flash, I mean, if you're close from here to where you are, you're going to get it. Not only that, but when the round goes up and it comes out, there's a lot of loose particles. And for some reason or another, it shoves all those particles at you, and it'll hit you all over the face bad, So the best thing to do is not be near one when it fires. Anyway, we fired the rounds and knocked all the Chinks off the tank. Knocked them off, And we kept firing.
How powerful it is.
Yeah, that's powerful. And then, one of the comical things that happened, before that happened, they said, oh, the Chinese were coming through, going by us, And the guy said, those are Marines. Let's get out of here. I said, they're not Marines, because somehow or another, you know how the Chinese walk. A little shuffled. It's funny, not like the Anglo. And I said, those are not Marines, they're Chinese. So then I said, I want to prove it to you. So I went down into the driver's hatch, and I opened the hatch, put the lights on, and I hollered, hey, Marine! They turned around like that, and nothing but flat faces, Chinese, And about that time I heard, I looked over here, and this was a Chinese soldier passing right by the tank. When I opened it up, I caught him by surprise. And you surprised me too. I turned like that, and oh, hell, I closed the hatch again and went up. And that's when I talked the guys into, after we got rid of the Chinese, they got knocked them out the tank. They kind of kept their distance. So I told the guys, okay, let's get out of here. Just get out of here. So we got out of the tank. We were down in the bottom. When we were down in the bottom, about from here to that, the tracks here and the road there, and they were just coming through, Chinese. Anyway, I told the guys, look, I'm going out. You, Ed, you the loader, come right behind. Come with me. You two guys give us 3 minutes, and then come behind us. I'm not going to give you no more time. You either come out or you stay and you die. We're going. So I came out, and we started wallowing and on the oil that the transmission had leaked out of the transmission, the oil, wallowing around the dumb thing. Anyway, when we in between groups, the Chinese were coming like in groups. So in between groups, him and I, we jumped over the embankment, which was real close. It was an abyss about maybe 1,000 feet deep. It was deep. And we jumped into the snow and brush and stuff. And when we were down there, then pretty soon, the other two guys came down and I said, okay, let's go. And we were hoping, because the MSR, which is the main supply road, was going this way. There was a ravine kind of following it out parallel. And I was hoping to go through the ravine and catch up with our division. So when we got down to the bottom, I saw a lot of people down there. And I said, and it didn't take long to find out who they were because they hollered something in Chinese, which I didn't understand. My Chinese was very limited. Then they started firing at us, Ding, ding, bullets were coming. And it's a stroke of luck. That's the only way you survive. It's just luck, just luck. And when we started going up the hill, then when we was getting up on top of close to the tanks, there was a Chinese over there hollering, Miguel, Miguel, telling the other guy that there were Americans in the area, It was, trap on the bottom, trap on the, okay, let's go on the side of the fountain, like this. Go on the side, not on the bottom on top, but on the side like this. And we went to hit a big depression, and they were just loaded with Chinese. So, man, we're trapped. Can't go through the road, can't go down, and we can't go through the side. So I told the guys, okay, go back. And I don't know why, for something better to do, I guess, or it just came on me, If we bury ourselves in the snow, they won't find us. And in the daytime, maybe we can see where the hell we're at or what's going on or, get a better orientated. So that's what I did. I told the guys, bury yourselves in the snow. And there was a lot of snow, so they dug a hole close to, I made sure it was near a brush so they won't stand out. So we buried ourselves in the snow, and you would think that we were freeze, under that condition. But I found out it's better to be in the snow than be out on top because you got the chill factor up there. Over here you got the cold, but up there you got the cold and the chill factor. And the chill factor's bad. Anyway, we dug a hole and we stayed there, covered ourselves, just our face sticking out, And believe it or not, I fell asleep. I was so tired from all the excitement and going on, I fell asleep, and then I woke up as the sun was out. It was a nice day. And I told the guy, yeah, see anything? I said, no, I don't see nothing, man. And, hey, Greek, how about you? Nothing. And, but I did see up on where our tanks were, they were still there. What happened was that one tank in front had bogged down, and that had trapped all the tanks behind it, including ours. Those guys were lucky they got out. Mind in, yeah. And because their tank commanders came back and told them to evacuate the tank, ours didn't come back. So the sun was out, and I told the guys, okay, let's get the hell out of here. We got out of the hole and went down to the bottom again because we didn't see nobody down there where the Chinese had been before. Now, the Chinese have, because of our aircraft, they will move at night. They wouldn't move in daytime. In daytime, before dawn came up, they would hide themselves, find some place to hide. Then they would move again at night because of our aircraft. So they were gone. The Chinese were gone. So then when we were down on the bottom walking, I hear an airplane coming. It was a Corsair. It was a fighter plane for the Marines. And he had been sent to destroy the tanks that were left behind. And I told the guy, see that? Anyway, he comes around, and then some more came, but this one guy came around, and we got out there, and we started waving at him, I mean, it didn't dawn on me that he might think we're Chinese and blow us away, Yeah, because we're not supposed to be there. And anyway, he zoom, and he makes another pass, and this time he kind of goes like that with his wings, That's a sign of recognition. I said, oh, man, we got him made. He's going to send a chopper for us, So I told the guys, okay, let's climb that hill up there, make it easier for the extraction to take place. We got up there and got night. Nobody came. And then it got cold. The wind came up. God, it was cold. And we found a rock mound, which kind of like make a little enclosure. And that we stayed in there. At least we were out of the chill factor. All night we stayed there. And during the night, I saw Chinese all over the place down there. Like I said, they move at night. Next morning, got the guys together, and I said, hey, no chopper came. We're going to get out of here. We're going to have to get it out on our own. I don't know how. I'll tell you one thing. If we get caught by the Chinese, they might shoot us on sight. Again, we might be taken prisoners. And again, we can't stay up here. So one of the guys said, "What are you going to do, Chief?" I said, "I'm going down through the ravine again, but you guys can do whatever the hell you want because I don't want to be responsible for you guys getting killed." So the guy said, "No, we'll go with you, Chief. We'll go with you." You know? Well, I was 25 years, and the guy was 17, no, not 17, but 18, 19 years old. We're young, you know. When you're 25 and they're that young, you're the old man, you know. So we went down through the creek, and that's where I told you we met this group of Chinese that were working, you know. And
Did you ever know if they were South Korean or North Korean?
they were Chinese.
Oh,
They were Chinese.
okay. They were there too.
They were. What it was, they were moving supplies around, and what I gathered was food, and they were moving this food around, and that's when they stopped, looked at me, you know, and kind of curious, wondering who the hell we were. That's when I told them I told myself I better take the initiative here, so I beat them to the punch. So I hollered, "Hey, Pongyo, ni halama." Yeah, means, "Hey, friend, how you doing?" You know. They said, how? Good. How means good in Chinese. How? And I said, "Tai yen la." Goodbye. I learned that much in Tinsen. So then we kept walking, and I told the guy, steady, steady, steady. Don't run, don't panic. And we kept on walking. Then we ran into a roadblock. And I hollered the same thing. They hollered something, I hollered the same thing. It didn't work this time. They just opened up a small arm fire, a machine gun. And we had no choice but to go to ground. And then next thing you know, they're all around us. It was a bayonet, you know. And then we got up, you know, put our hands up. And right away they went through our pockets, took our wallets, watches, whatever was available. Then they tied our hands behind our back like this with rope. Then they led us through up to see one of the commanders, Chinese commanders. And on the way up, the Chinese got the word that they had captured some Americans, and they all came running, man. They were all over you. Some of them were hollering at you, spitting at you, and laughing in your face, you know, ah ha ha ha, mego puao, you know, like that, crap like that. And some of them had the bayonets, and they were going like that, making us jump back. They got a big kick out of that, watching us jump back, and every time they made a thrust at us, you know. And it's an ordeal. It's a hell of a situation. There's nothing you can do about it, you know.
What was going through your mind when you got captured?
Well, the thing that helped me out was that I had been in China, so I knew the Chinese character and the Chinese personality. But I forgot. I can't tell you what I was scared, a little bit scared, you know, because that's the worst part about getting captured. The first time you're captured, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if they're going to shoot you, kill you, or torture you, or bury you, or whatever. It's really the uncertainty of the thing makes it bad. So we finally got to the tank commander. I mean, not the tank commander, the Chinese commander, and he didn't know English either. And there was some guards behind us. Then all of a sudden they motioned for us to get down on our knees. And we were lined up. And they said, "Oh, execution time," you know. And I said, well, I console myself. Well, you know, there's only 4 of us, but look how many we got of those guys. Hell, we must have got 300, 350 of them, you know. It's a good exchange. It's a good exchange. And my buddy, he was praying over there. I don't know what he was praying, but I heard him say, God this and God that, God, you know. And then I looked up, and there was a reconnaissance plane coming flying over. So that's why they made us kneel down so the airplanes wouldn't see us. You know? Then they took us from there. It took us down through the road again, and again we meet all these darn Chinese, you know, who were getting a big laugh at our expense. And we came to this hut. And now housing is a premium because it had been destroyed by by the Americans. And we came to this hut. They talked to the commander there, and he told them something, and they took us to the edge of the big hole. There's a big hole there. And they got us down the edge, and they made us kneel down. Then they tied our ankles to our wrists in the back. And the guy, he shoves it right into the hole, you know. And we were there all night. And the Chinese would come up to the edge of the hole, look down, you know, like you're looking at a bunch of snakes down there or something, you know, curious looking down there. They would go away, and another bunch would come. I try not to look at them. And I try to concentrate my IOE or someplace. It's a hell of a situation. You don't know what to do. You can't smile. You can't, you don't know how they're going to react to the way you're reacting. Anyway, that nighttime they got us out of there and we started out. Then there was a lot of adventures and stuff and this and that. But I think the worst part was we were at this hut, and the Navy had set up a fire zone to protect the evacuation, okay? And the Chinese, instead of taking we were going with the Chinese up to the front. And we came to this village, and all of a sudden the Navy opens up. That Navy, those shells are terrific. I'd heard bombs, I heard artillery, but that naval guns, boy, they're terrible. We were in this hut, and then the first one hits, and when it hit, the whole hut I was in disintegrates. Debris was falling all over us, there was, and I didn't know what to do, you want to run, but you can't because there's a guard there. If he sees you running, he's going to shoot you, So you don't know what to do, and then we were trying to work ourselves out of all that debris. Then I saw a Chinese over there. Oi! Quietly. Come here, quick. And I told the guy, let's go. And we moved out, and we got out of shook all the dirt and scrap out and took off. And meantime, the stuff is still coming in. And they took us down to this big embankment, for railroad embankment. You know how the railroad embankments are like that, railroad done. There was a culvert down there. They took us down there, and they flashed their light in there. And there was a bunch of civilians, Korean civilians, and they were all huddled up in there looking, And the Chinese told them to get out. Yeah. And it's every man for himself, And then they didn't want to get out, so they cocked their rifles, And they were going to shoot them right there if they didn't get out. So they start filing out. They were running, and it was pretty sad, pretty pathetic, because a lot of the women were running with small children hanging on to their arms, running, and some had babies, and there was a lot of shrieking, a lot of yelling, and the bombs were coming in and just blowing them away as fast as they come in, Big flashes of light, explosions taking place. And we went down into the culvert, and we're all huddled up in there with the Chinese, And friend and foe, we were all reacting the same way, We look up I don't know why you look up in the ceiling, Whoom, big things coming on out there. And we were there all night. We were kind of lucky. One of the Chinese panics and starts to head for the opening, and the rest of them grab him. And anyway, he settled down. They were human too, just like we were. They had their fears. And the next day, I was wondering why the Chinese didn't leave the hut, didn't leave the embankment, It was daylight. Well, for one thing, like I said, they were afraid of our airplanes. And then we heard a Corsair, which is a Marine fighter pilot, circling. Then the sandbags at the end of the culvert just had some cracks, and I'd seen down there, and I saw that guy coming. I said, man, he's diving at us, and I couldn't figure out why. Surely he didn't know we were in there, And so then he opens up, and that was terrible too, because you could see those tracers coming, hitting the embankment around you, and all you can do is just wait till he pulls out of his dive, and go, I made it. Oh, God, I made it. Anyway, he makes about 2 passes and he disappears. And then when we walked out, I looked in the back, and there was a lot of gasoline drums up on top of the track. That's what the guy was blasting at. But we were so close that stuff was coming in at us too. Yeah, like I said, there was a lot little adventures in there. Little close calls.
What was it like to be with the Chinese there in the hideout? You mentioned, you said that even Chinese are human, even that they were human. Was there any interaction
It was
with
just,
the Americans?
no, it was just like we were all the same. We were all Chinese or we were all American. We had one thing in common, and that was the bombardment out there. I guess misery loves company, because they didn't even bother with us. I mean, we were in a crowd, but they didn't laugh or talk or anything. Like I say, all of us the Chinese and us, we would look through the ceiling and hear the things, and once in a while would shake, because the thing was coming down. But it was like a common thing, like we were common people. It wasn't like he's the enemy, I'm the guy, and no, it was like we had something in common, and that was the what would you call it, the expectancy of death. We were all facing the same thing. And they had rifles and all that, but what good did it do them? They couldn't control that big thing. Yeah, so that was one of the adventures. And I developed a pretty good rapport with the Chinese because of the fact that I spoke a little English and I'd been in Tianjin, knew the character and the personality. But I kept thinking those other guys must have really been traumatized to be in that situation. Yeah.
Those, meaning the other Americans?
Yeah, the guys were with me, the young kids, 19, 18 years old. They were really scared, of course. You can't blame them, Their age makes a lot of difference. So I was 25 years old. I was considered an old man by then. Because I was only 19 when I went into the Marine Corps. Yeah, there was a lot of adventures, and I'm sure you'll see them or hear them on the book, a lot of adventures.
When did you actually get to the POWs?
Well,
camps.
This happened on Thanksgiving, December 25th. We were already captured. I got captured on the 12th of December, and we didn't get to the camp till February. February up in Kangi, which is just way closer to the Manchurian border. Kangi is way up here someplace. Where's the reservoir? Yeah, Kangi. Yeah,
right here.
Yeah, that's where we were. And we went up there, and then we started to get indoctrinated. They would take us in this building, all the prisoners that were there, and they would give us long lectures on the evils of capitalism and the goodness of communism. And I don't know where they got their information from, but they would dwell on the discrimination of blacks and minorities in the United States, and they would dwell on the high crime rate in the big cities, and they would dwell on the Mexican fruit pickers, their substandard living conditions, And
those were the kind of lectures that other prisoners would get.
Oh, everybody would get exposed to that.
And who was there? Was Americans, British, other UN?
Yeah, some of the British were there and Americans, but the Chinese, of course, they were doing the preaching, the lecturing, and it was cold. It was cold and that hot. Anyway, their theme never changed. It was the same thing there. All the negative things about the United States and all the positive things about the communist system, and that was the brainwashing. They had a lot of techniques too, like after we got to camp, the Chinese army have their own way of doing things, and they had luck with the system when they captured some nationalist Chinese. The communists captured the nationalist Chinese. They were indoctrinated and put them through this process. Then they won them over and got more soldiers in their ranks. So they thought they could do the same thing with Americans. And there's a lot of there's one of the systems that they use is what they call self-criticism. Self-criticism is like in a squad. I'd say there's 4 of us or 8 of us were here. Okay. Every day it was time for one guy to criticize himself. By criticizing himself, he would say, I apologize to the group for being weak the other day, for not bringing my share of wood inside, or for trying to get more food than all of you. Criticizing yourself, And this is a form that the Chinese use to find out your weakness. That way they can exploit you, But of course, we always countered because they didn't have enough English-speaking people to monitor these sessions. So we would gather around. They put a guard out there, make sure we were criticizing ourselves. But we would gather around, and at there, some of the guys that came up with some good ones. Some guy said, "I want to criticize myself because last night," he said, "I had 2 wet dreams." I was dreaming of Marilyn Monroe. The guy says, one guy said, hey, don't feel bad, buddy. I get a good dream just in the daytime, just thinking about her, Stuff like that. Or else we say, well, what are we going to talk about today, guys? Okay, you get up there, man, and tell us all the good qualities about a Chevrolet, you know. And then when you get through, you get up there and talk about the Cadillacs. And you talk about the Fords, And that way somebody would always be talking and the guard would pass by and he thought we were doing it the other way, So we weren't, so.
And this was in English? This was in English? The language?
Yeah, but they didn't understand.
They understand.
All they had was a guard there going back and forth.
As long as
they had some of them, but they couldn't cover all the squads.
The idea was just to keep somebody pretending that you...
Yeah, right.
Their
as long as you were talking and he saw you talking and they were grouped up, that's the main thing. And we found it real easy, because everybody's got their opinion about cars, or we pick out different subjects, and we'd stay with them. Then they would take us in this field, and then again they would lecture us over and over and over again, And what I would do anyway, I would never stay on the fringes of the crowd, because that's where the guards were patrolling, make sure you didn't upset their lectures. And I would get in the center where they couldn't see it. So then I'd go like this. Tell my buddy, I'm down there. Then I would make 1, 2, 3, 4. We play tic-tac-toe. I go like this, and this. He'd go like this. Then we'd go like this, and if he won, then he'd make a line over here, and I would make a line over here. So that's how we killed the time, playing tic-tac-toe. And then when it was all over, the guys would say, "Voila, finished," So then the guys would get up, start milling around, and somebody would say, 48, 47. Then somebody else would say, 48. Then all of us together would say, some shit. But we never got punished for it or something like that. But that's our way of countering their system or their indoctrination process. But you have to be very careful, one time I was in this, with the Chinese, we were, for somehow a reason, me and this other guy got separated from the rest and we got put in with the Chinese. And we were still prisoners, but we got so lax that we became part of it. We would squat around in a circle and drink the hot water, They slurp like hell. Anyway, we got real close, not buddy, but
real close with the Chinese?
Yeah, we interfaced. We had been through so much together that you kind of got a little affinity there. And I was in this, one time we were in this mountain, and me and Gray had a dugout there. Evidently, some Chinese had been before there, and they used the dugout. And we went in there, and Gray was laying down, and I was there, just sitting down. And all of a sudden, the Chinese comes in, the interpreter. And he was lonesome. I mean, he needed company. Like I said, they're human too. And then he started talking. He says, Chifo, you want a cigarette? I said, yeah. You got tobacco? Yeah. He says, I don't have no paper. Oh, he says, I got lots of paper. And he pulled out a Bible. and he rips one out, and he says, Chief, you believe in God? I said, well, I got my beliefs, maybe not as strong as other people, but I got my own beliefs. And he said, you know what God spelled backwards means? I said, yeah, dog, God, dog. And he said, well, tell me about yourself. Tell me about your God. And he said, I can't tell you about my God because I don't see him as a person. I just see him as a power within us. And this is what you call on this power when you find yourself lost, for instance, and you have no other means, no recourse for help other than this power that you have in you, I think whoever gave this power out gave it to everybody. And told me, like when you get caught in an artillery barrage, Nobody going to save you. Okay. Uh, it's natural that when a husband needs help, he'll call his wife. She'll help him out. Children need help, they'll call their parents, you know. And so everybody's got to lean on somebody to get help, you know. But in this case, you got to lean on yourself. You create this power. And anyway, we talked a long time, you know, and I was afraid because, you know, they might have repercussions of the way I was talking there. Mm-hmm. But anyway, he said, you know, in a way, you and I have think the same way. You know, then he took off. But that goes to show you how close we got to interfacing with him when we start talking about God. And you know, incidentally, you know, I was in Myanmar where they had to get together for POWs, and I met two of the guys that were in Hanoi Hilton. Of course, they were in there for 6 years or something. You know what? You probably read about them. Anyway, some guy says, hey, Chief, he says, you know how these guys talk, how you survive, how you thank God that you survived, you know? And he says, you know what I think? I said, what's that? He says, I think those 2 bowls of rice I was getting every day. I said, you got a point there. Yeah. But, because it was the whole system was, it was real enlightening. When you get out of it, you think back and you find a lot of positive things in it. Because for one thing, you build up this friendship with all these guys, you know, which after 50 years is still going on, you know. You join a family of veterans, where there are veterans all over the place, and, you know, they're VFW, American Legion, you name it, you know, they're all over the place. Yeah, anything else, Phil?
Yeah, well, you were in the camps.
Mm-hmm.
Was there something that? What were your fears being there?
I was always afraid I was going to get sick
Mm-hmm.
and not die, you know, because it was easy to get pneumonia, pleurisy. But other than that, I developed a philosophy. Everybody develops, they've got their own way of defending themselves, you know, finding console in something. And the way I said it, okay, you know, life is nothing but cycles. We go through cycles in life. I was talking to the guy, you know. You start school, grammar school, you have a duration period, you're going through school, then it ends. You know. So it's a cycle. That cycle is over. Then you start another one, and another one, and another one. And this year that we're in, it's just one cycle. We have already started the cycle. Right now we're in the duration period. It's going to end, you know. It's got to end. It can't go fighting forever. And I told myself, well, I'm 25. No war in history besides Vietnam has lasted 5 years. So if I get out of here, I'm going to be 30 years old. Life expectancy in the United States is 65, 70, whatever, you know. So all I have to do is hang tight. When I get out of here, I'll have lots of good living to do. And it worked out that way. But like I say, everybody has their own beliefs, their own way of coping with things. This is the way I coped. Knowing that my stay there was not forever. It's only temporarily. Just stay in there and try not to get sick. Stay as healthy as you can, and you'll survive. You'll make it.
You said earlier that there was a big percentage. What was the percentage of casualties?
I think it was 38%.
38% of the POWs died there?
Yeah. If you line up 100 guys and you get 38 guys, that's quite a bit.
And what was the total number of people that were in camps?
Oh, I would say about 7,000 something. 7,000 were captured, and only about 4,000 returned. Yeah. Most of them died because of the cold. A lot of them died because of malnutrition. A lot of them caused by things that become part of you as a POW. For instance, worms. You know, you start developing worms because of the dirty food you're eating. And sometimes the worms are, they're just like humans. They wait till supper time, then they come up here and wait for their chow. It's very funny. And so, of course, the rectum sometimes ejects a lot of them. But one night I was laying there and I felt something in my mouth. Like, I said, what damn? I thought it was a food particle that I had not absorbed. I looked in, pulled out a 5-incher, man. Oh, that scared me. I threw it away, and that was only one of the discomforts we had with another thing with lice, body lice, piojo. You know what piojo is? Okay, but these were not the black ones. They were the white ones. They were body lice, and they just grow on you and multiply on you. I mean, you become like a Hamlet form, and you night and day they're just eating you up, and it's kind of dangerous too because they can cause typhus and stuff like that. But anyway, we started going to the wood runs up in the mountains to bring wood back, and we were able to boil our clothes because you can just get the lice and kill and kill and kill, but then next morning there's a big string of eggs. They always hang around the warm parts of your body, the waistline, your armpits, that's where they hang out. And it would be you could take off your clothes, but you wouldn't see any in your body. But you can look at the clothes, man. There they were crawling around. Body lice. So body lice and the worms, of course. Then later on with the second year with vitamin deficiency, your body starts to react. We develop what they call night blindness. Night blindness is due to inadequate whatever vitamins in carrots, and it's real funny because your night blindness, you're looking like that, you see the whole image, and pretty soon it's like watching TV, and the image starts closing in on you like this. That's all you can see. The rest is black on top and black on bottom, and then pretty soon when it comes like that, then you start going like this, start looking to the top of your eyes. It'll go like this, and you look to the bottom. And that's caused by whatever vitamins in carrots. Also, we had what they call goiter problems. That was because lack of iodine. Your goiter glands start to swell up. You're going around like frogs. A lot of little things come up.
Mm-hmm. What were the conditions like for people in there?
It was pretty rough because, we as Americans don't know what we got. That's another thing that you have to get used to, the association of words. For instance, if they said breakfast, what comes to your mind? Ham and eggs, coffee, toast, butter, blah, blah, And now this guy, he says, let's go, we go get breakfast. I go there and I got a little pail and he slops that gruel on it, the sorghum. So first he asked me, Jigga. I said, when I got 4 guys, how many guys? 4, okay. I take it back. And the guy says, where's the breakfast, Chief? I said, right there, man. Is that it? I ain't going to eat that shit. I said, well, don't eat it. I don't care. You don't eat, you don't live. It's simple as that. I thought I want to start eating because it's going to freeze up on. So now you haven't washed your hands for God knows how many days, and you don't have no utensils, no flatware, no spoons, no nothing. So you get the 3 fingers like that, and you dip it into that stuff, and you start eating, and that's the way you live. And it was another thing that we did when we were 4 of us was we were in the same place, and it got cold. The Chinese came and brought some straw for us to sleep in. So what I did, I said, it's not going to work out too good. We got to have one guy cover us, and then he can crawl in. So I got some sticks, cut one short end, and gave them out. And whoever had the short stick was the one that had to cover the rest of the guys. But then during the night, as you roll over, straw starts to get underneath you, like a sheet when you lay in bed. It starts to get underneath you. Then as you turn over, the more you turn over, the more the pretty soon in the morning you're on top of the straw. You got nothing covering you. Yeah. Yeah. Incidentally, that brings me an incident when it was so cold that this guard went to sleep with us in the same room. Not sleep with us, guard us in the same room. And it was terrible because it got pitch black. And every time somebody would move, the guard thought we were getting ready to jump on him and escape, you know. Man, he'd holler, then he put his flashlight on there and he got his gun over here and Pusagwa, Pusagwa, shut up, shut up. Well, I was so glad when morning came. That guy was driving me nuts. Yeah, the lice, the worms, and the malnutrition, because like I said, another thing too, by eating the white rice, they do something to it. They take something out and you get beriberi. Beriberi is swelling of the legs. I mean, just like to get full of water is what it is. Wet beriberi, they call it right here. And then all your joints start to hurt. And you don't get, we never got relief of that until we got rid of the rice. So we started eating sorghum. Sorghum is called, in the United States, it's called milo maize. Milo maize. Yeah. And so that's why we had such a hard time too, like I said, because you say hospitals, and you think of beds, doctors, sheets, medicine, you know. And over there, a hospital was just a ground, just a hut. You slept on the ground. And that's what we were sleeping in. Even the hospital that they call a hospital. I never went to a hospital, no matter how sick I was. I figured I'd go down there, man. I'm never going to come back. So,
How do you cope with or how do you keep yourself together? Kept yourself together. You were away from your families, mom, dad, and what mechanisms do you use to cope with
well,
your circumstances?
in a sense, I had started coping with that when I was 14 years old. I was going up to Idaho. 15, 16. Going up to Idaho and LA. No, I was away from my family. I wasn't close to them. I was mixed up with these other guys. So I was kind of acclimatized to that environment, you might say. And you're so busy taking care of yourself, you don't think about your family. I mean, they're in another world. They're in another world. You're in this world. They're over there in that other world. And so you don't think about them. You know they're not having a hard time like you are. So they're better off, you know, so you don't think about them. Oh, yeah, I want to know how you start dwelling, you know. I remember one time we were in this hut around Christmas time, and Yesko, he was the only married guy there. And we started talking about Christmas dinner, pies and cakes and fruit cakes and all that. We were always talking about food whenever we got hungry. And then Jessica was saying, guys, you should see my little boy. God, he takes after his old man. And I think my wife is probably shopping for him today. And God, she always used to go shopping for me, you know. And he'd on and on. He started dwelling, you know, kind of feeling sorry for himself. And then some guy in the dark said, yes, go. I said, yeah. My heart pumps piss for you. And everybody started laughing. So that broke the sadness, the melancholy deal. So you would do that. There was a lot of ways that we did do it ourselves. And then, like I said, we were so busy, we never thought of our parents. You know, we know they were all right. They got a bed to sleep, chow and all this, you know. They can't be like us here. You know.
Your philosophy to, you talked about your philosophy to, help you get through this experience. Is that philosophy something that you got from your parents? Or?
I think I got that from being raised and also being trained in the Marine Corps. You know, you don't have it easy in the Marine Corps when you start off in boot camp. I mean, tell you, that's rough. And so but I think most of it was, I had been used to living in tents, sleeping in ditches, sleeping by the lakes when we go to the piscas. Sometimes the whole family would live by the lake there underneath trees. That was it. We didn't have no houses or anything to live in.
Because that was only temporary, right?
Yeah, it's only temporary, right. So I think that had a lot of bearing to do with it. That helped me out a lot. And of course, you develop your own. Everybody develops their own way of thinking. And that's I was able to cope with. But the main thing that I never lost sight of was that no wars lasted 5 years. You're gonna get out of here, and you got the rest of your life to enjoy it. Play it cool, man. Play it cool.
So a lot of faith, a lot of hope.
Yeah, a lot of hope. Yeah, and it's mostly hope, not faith. Faith in yourself. Because, like I told the guys from Marine Corps here one time, a lot of people always praying for God. I don't know why I should get into it or not. But anyways, I told them, but these guys are using God as a crutch. They gotta take care of themselves, and that's what I did. I took care of myself. If I depend on God to do something for me, God, I might die waiting for Him. So I do it myself. I take my own. That was part of my philosophy, and I guess it wasn't an atheist philosophy, but it was another philosophy where I would depend on myself, not on God, to bring me through.
What was it? Was there something that you missed from back home?
Yeah, I
In
miss.
particular, your mom's cooking.
Yeah, right. I miss all the tortillas and frijoles fritos. I could just see rolling tortillas and eat them, with a little bit of jalapeno or something. But I really missed. I used to think of the fried potatoes and fried beans, and Mexicans are always frying things. Yeah, the lard too. Manteca. Yeah, so I was thinking of all that. When I got hungry, and you could always tell when I got hungry, or not only me but the guy, because we start talking about food. Subconsciously, you start talking about food. About sandwiches, and I think everybody there was dreaming about being turned loose in a big market, produce market, or like Vaughn's or all the Safeway and all the big stores where you could run up and down the aisles and grab this and grab the cookies and grab this can. So when you get hungry, funny, your mind turns to food right away. So that's how you cope. You think about these things, but you don't let it affect you.
Almost like a way to
Yeah.
fulfill you, huh?
Yeah, you just say that's in the future. That's in the future. Right now, I gotta live by eating this stuff here. If I don't eat it, I'm gonna die. But that's okay. That's okay, because that's in the future. It's coming. It's coming. I'll be there. I'll be there. Just a matter of time. Just hold on.
Did you see any other POWs die there?
Oh yeah, yeah. So it's a lot of times I didn't see too many because they would drag them off when they were dead and either bury them, but they would take them out beyond our sight. The one I saw, I don't know what happened, but when I saw him was laying on the ground, he had his mouth open. And I remember this real clearly because some guy flapped his jacket over, and they were just crawling with lice. When the lice were fighting, trying to get underneath each other. I think what happened toward the last, before the guy died, they just quit fighting. They don't think, they don't kill the lice no more, and they just give up. Just give up. And you could always tell when the guy was going to give up because he'd go to the corner of the hut. Our hut was about 10 by 10, and there was maybe 8 guys in it. That's a small area for 8 guys. And he'd crawl in the corner, and then he would cover his head up like that and get in a fetal position like that. And he would right in the corner, and you'd say, Jackson, come on, man, you got to eat. Leave me alone. Jackson, get up. Leave me alone. The first one he's dead. Maybe the next day or something. So they kind of, by not eating, they hurried up the process of dying. So, yeah, I saw.
Like a depression state.
Yeah, I saw that those guys died.
Any of your good buddies ever died there?
No, the only ones I felt responsible for was my crewmen, but the rest of them, they were just part of the herd. I didn't. Oh yeah, we were all in the same faith, but they were part of the herd. they weren't real close to me like my tank crew was. For stands to reason because I'd interfaced with them a lot more than I had interfaced with the others. All the rest of them were Army guys. There was only about 6, 7 Marines in a company of about 300. The rest were all Army. So we had a real small percentage of Marines that were captured.
Was there a lot of Mexicans or Latinos there with you?
Yeah, like I said, there was about maybe 10 at the most Latinos. And that's another thing also that helped us out because, well, the Anglo, they had their common language, common likes, dislikes, We were a little bit different. We had our own culture, our own background. So we used to get together. And of course, the Latinos were always cracking jokes, making fun. Pinche cabezón, ¿Y qué pasó ayer, Rodríguez? No, pues el puto chino me quiso llevar para allá, quién sabe qué, Stuff like that. We were always laughing and kidding, and we started singing songs at night. We would sing together. Amorcito corazón, canción de los Panchos, stuff like that. And we were always, well, I thought we did a good job. We had our own little clique over here, our own little circle, while the rest of the population was over here. We had over here. And we had Puerto Ricans there. We used to mix it a lot with Hispanics, the Mexicans. And I remember one day, the Puerto Ricans, as you know, like voodoo. They believe in that voodoo stuff, black magic and stuff like that, And me and Moreno, we heard that they were having these seances in the hut. And I told Moreno, let's go down there, man, see what's going on, maybe. I'll pick it up when going to the Puerto Ricans.
Yeah, and you're yes.
Yeah, so I told Moreno, let's go to 2 black Puerto Ricans. Abel y Fuentes. And Abel was going into a trance. I think he was just making it up anyway. There's a lot of mumble jumble stuff, And then Fuentes was supposed to ask him. He was what they call it, intermediary, and he was the source of communication between us and the guy in the trance. Yeah. And anyway, they were asking him a lot of questions, when we going home, but he would never come out with a definite answer. And then I noticed one of the Puerto Ricans was missing, Lugo. Luis Lugo was missing, So I know what the hell he did, They were pretty clannish, so they always hung together. And then I was sitting like here, and there was a little room in the back like that. And then Abel, the guy was in a trance, started talking about the mano blanca. Y vendrá la mano blanca y castigará a esos que no creen en nuestra palabra. He was insinuating me and Moreno, see? So then we're there listening, and he's going on, and pretty soon la mano blanca, and I looked in like this out of the corner of my eye, and I saw this white hand coming, I knew I wasn't the Puerto Rican, so I just shifted positions, getting down like that. So I was in a good position. Then when it came in again, I went, whack! I heaved that guy on the floor. I said, ahí está tu mano blanca, cabrón. I told Moreno, let's get out of here, man. This is nothing but crap. We ruined everything. But, we were always coping with the situation more than with the humor and laughter.
What was a typical day like being there?
Well, the morning you'd get up. Well, if it was summer, then we'd have to go after wood. So you get up in the morning, you have a roll call, and then you have a walk through the village, and then you'd come and have breakfast, and then you would get ready to go out and wood run. We had to go maybe a couple of miles in the forest to get wood. When we were over there, you cut your own logs, more or less what you could carry. And the Chinese was kind of fair about it because they gave every man, do you know what a caddy is? I don't need. There's a measure of wood, like a cord, like we use a cord of wood. They use a caddy. We were assigned so many caddies, and if you brought your your assigned quota, you could take the rest of the year off. So we all went to get wood, and we were coming wood. And some of the interesting, uh, maybe I shouldn't say this, but when we were on the wood run, some of the guys spotted a lot of weed, marijuana, and then after that, it just spread like fire throughout the camp. Everybody was going, yeah, I'm going to go on the wood run, go on the wood run. And, yeah, because it grows wild. See, the Koreans, they raise it to make clothes out of it. And they raise it to make rope out of it and God knows what else, And that's what they use it. So it was all over the place. I remember one time going on a wood run, this guy said, Korean was passing by. He said, Yobo! Because they call it Korean Yobo. Yobo! San piso! You got any weed? And the Korean goes down, reaches like that, throws him some rope. The guy said, what the hell I want this rope for? The other guy said, that's weed, man. That's hemp. Anyway, that was one of the diversions we had. And I remember one time we were up, because the Chinese would stay around the base of the mountain. And we were up on the mountain on top, and it was kind of steep coming down. And we were chopping wood, and some guy said, hey, look down there, man. One of the guards is coming up. I said, yeah, look at him. He's coming up. So one of the other guys said, let's take care of him. So they got a log, perfect log, round log, about 7 feet. And we got to the edge and pushed it off. And they was tumbling and just going every which way, and the guard was coming up. He saw that. He didn't know which way to run, because every time he moved, that log looked like it was following him. He found some tree trunk there and got underneath it, and that log just passed by him. But he didn't know we had done it on purpose. But whatever he was coming for, he went down. He didn't come up no more. Yeah, it's a lot of comical things, Another, I thought it was kind of comical, and was we were watching a dog fight between the Americans and the Chinese. The Chinese had the MiGs, we had the F-86 Saberjet, I think it was called. Anyway, we could see them crisscrossing, the contrails, see them crisscrossing. Then we would hear the machine go. Anyway, there's one time we saw this course, the F-80. Anyway, the jet that they had, F-86, I think it was. He was coming down like this, like a kite when you cut the string. He just come down like this. And pretty soon we saw the pilot. He bailed out. He was coming down in a chute, And instead of the guys being sympathetic with the guy, you know what they were saying? Hey, Mama, you had ham and eggs this morning, but you're going to have sorghum tonight. Or else they would say, I hope you brought a lot of bug juice because you're going to need it. And another guy would say, yeah, I can see him up there now looking down there. Where are they? Where are they? With his little pistol, And they just refused to take anything serious. I don't know whether it was we got hardened up or calloused or what, But there was so many incidents of laughter.
This book that you put together, is this do you talk about these experiences?
Yeah, what I'm talking about, it's all in here.
Korean War.
It's all in here.
And tell us a little bit. Actually, why don't you tell us a little bit about both books and what kind of what motivated you to put these books together?
Well, this one, Surviving the Odds, I had meant to write it ever since I got out. Survive. After I survived, came home and all this and that. But I felt that my kids, my children, and some of my good friends would have some kind of a history about me after I was gone. They would look in the book and say, yeah, the old man, he was... Anyway, that's what kind of motivated me to do it. And then when I got up to... I started with a typewriter. So then when the computers came along, it was real easy. You know, make a mistake, wipe it out, put something on it. And up in Colorado, lived in Colorado for 8 years. And it snows up there. It gets cold and you're inside. And sometimes you get a little bored. You know, you watch TV, it get bored. So I started working on this book. And the more I worked on it, the more interested I got on it, you know. And so I finally finished it up there, this book here. And it's mostly it's an autobiography, really, about my growing up, going into the Marine Corps, what happened when I was in the Marine Corps. And the best thing about it, writing that book, people find it hard to believe, but when you write a book and you write an autobiography, when you're living, okay, there's so many things that happen to you. You know, everybody, it happens to all of us. And we can't express them. We can't express them, you know, because of certain circumstances. Anyway, when you finish the book, then you feel like a Catholic going to confession. You know, you got it out of you, you know, and you feel good. Gives a great feeling. You got it out, man. I don't have to carry it no more. And let somebody else share it, you know. And that's the way it felt.
Was there something particular in writing that book and your experiences? Is there something in particular, a message that you wanted to convey to society?
Well, one of the things I would like to say is that, you know, going to school barefooted, this and that, under the harsh conditions of depression and the economic situations, you know, the poverty. And then I didn't become president of the United States, but I managed to reach a level of quality engineering and with general dynamics and process control, which are, what you might call them, office jobs, you know. So here I am with an 8-year education, but when I came back from Korea, I said, I'm not going to lose my GI. I started going to school again. I finished my high school, and I took 2 years of college, and that my GI ran out. But that was enough to open the door for me. Yeah? So if somebody reads it, you know, little education helps you. No matter how little it is, it's going to help you open doors for you. And I was hoping that maybe kids that say, oh, I got it rough, you know, I can never do this and I can never do that. You can do anything you want, man. Just set your mind to it, set your goals, and apply a lot of self-discipline. You have to apply self-discipline. Otherwise, you can't reach your goals. So that's a message that I would hoping to give to my children. You know, if the old man can do it, I can do it. See? And of course, my nephews and the other, whoever was interested in me. So that's why I wrote the book. But it's a great feeling when you get it out. Everything comes out of you, you know, your whole, just you unburden yourself. Mm-hmm. This one here was the school teacher. She sent us a bunch of questions and I answered them, and I didn't know it was going to be in a book like this. But I have nothing against her. She did a good job. Mm-hmm. She lives right here in Orange County, and we get along real good. All the guys, the name of the guys here that got turned loose, I gave her the information because after I got out, this guy's from Hawaii. That's something too. You see, you become so interfaced with people from all over. And Richard Makua from Hawaii, and Ray Hikita was the one that his mother kept track of all the prisoners that were coming out. It was in the newspapers, articles, you know, such and such today, and such tomorrow. So he sent me all the articles, and I compiled them into a master roll roster. We had the guy's name, the rank, and the units attached to him, your hometown. So all of that is in here. That's this one here I kind of enjoyed it because this one is more nothing too much about POWs, even though the title says what happened to American prisoners that were in Korea. Mine is not that. It's mostly combat conditions in Korea. Mm-hmm. How you slept, how you ate, what you ate, you know.
In that book?
In this book here. This one here is most of my autobiography.
Before going to World War II, and then you're going back to the Korean War.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel any responsibility, growing up at, being growing up in the Mexican community? Did you feel a sense of patriotism that you have to go defend the country, United States?
Oh yeah, yeah. I always felt that. I felt that this is my country. This is my country. I'm not going to go to Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
I know what it's like down there. I'm going to stay right here. And the quicker I assimilate into this society, the better off I'm going to be. So I was always striving for that assimilation. And now, but yes, I felt patriotism.
Let me.
Then the Marine Corps also instilled in you this patriotism,
Mm-hmm.
where you have colors, they lower the colors on their bugle, and a lot of fanfare, and they instill this patriotism in you.
I want to backtrack a little bit. When you got captured, what did you have any negative feelings or maybe resentment that
Oh yes,
that your group left you behind, and
yes,
then that led to your capture and being in a POW?
yes, yes, yes. The tank commander that bugged out on us, I felt. Well, when I was in that hole, that was one of the ways I was enduring because I was so full of hate, anger. And I would let out my anger at these guys, like that goddamn tank commander. If he hadn't run out on us, maybe we hadn't got caught. And maybe if this driver had done his job, I would have been in a position to get us out of there, But he chickened out, and so we're here, And I would say the higher ups too. They had a responsibility. They should have known that what the conditions were and what the odds were, coming out. Yes, I would say you revel in anger. Then after a while it starts to cool off. It gets to the point where you start hating people, people you were with because of that. I've always felt that my tank commander was responsible for my loader dying. Because if he had run out of us and we hadn't done the prison camp, my loader would be alive today.
Your who?
Loader.
Uh-huh. And being during that time there that you were there, did it ever occur to your mind that was it for you?
That it was the end?
Yeah, that you would not make it home.
Oh no, I never did. Like I said, I had been on my own, survived on my own. Like I said, it was just a matter of time. Just a matter of time. And you're gonna get out of here. Just play it cool, man. Don't antagonize the Chinese and stay out of their way, blend in with the crowd, and you're gonna get out. Yeah.
How about other people there? Did you ever see anybody commit suicide or lose it?
I never seen anybody commit suicide, but a lot of guys were losing faith in themselves. They were. If you lose faith in yourself, you're worthless. And in order to keep that faith going, you have to apply self-discipline. Self-discipline is very important, and you cannot have pity. Pity goes out the window. Like in that camp, if somebody knows that if you feel pity for me because I'm sick and I quit fighting. I'm depending on you to help me to this and that. So self-pity, I have self-pity. It's bad. You can't have pity for anybody, not even yourself. You gotta apply a discipline, man. But yeah, a lot of guys are, oh, poor this guy, or poor John, he was this. Oh, did you hear about Paul? He died last night. Oh, yeah. And oh, God, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't feel sorry. You can't. Pity goes out the window, especially self-pity. Because if you get hurt or something, oh, poor me, I'm going to die. I'm going to get gangrene. I'm going to get infested or whatever, And you can't do that. You got to supply self-discipline. Yeah, I got a scratch. I'll be all right. Yeah, a couple of days up. we can make it. That's what you got to do. And you learn that. I don't know where you learn it. You just pick up going through life, going through the Marine Corps training, and like I said, since I was 15, I was more or less on my own. So
overall,
when you're on your own, you don't depend on nobody. I think that's what happens. When you're home, oh, Mama, would you help me with this? Or Daddy, would you help me with that? Or one of your brothers, hey, Jack, how about over here? Or Jose, ayúdame con esto, And you're not on your own. You're depending on people. And this other way, you're on your own.
so the overall transformation that this experiences help you to build, or the overall transformation that you went through, how would you describe it?
Well, I would describe it just part of your life. Like I said, another phase in your life you went through. And in a sense, like I told this one guy, I wouldn't take $1 million for the experience, but I wouldn't give you 2 cents to go through it again. But there's a lot of positive in it. Like I say, you build a lot of friends, and you become strong. You become strong. I don't know whether I reflect that or not, but you become strong. You become independent. You become strong, and you minor things, which are big things to other people. How am I going to pay the water bill? Oh, I got the big electric bill today. I got to go see the doctor because I got this and that. All that crap. You compare that to how you were, and how the conditions that you endure, and they become minor. You don't worry about that no more. You have your, what would you call it? Your measuring stick right here. You measure all these problems that you have with this one stick. This one stick is your past life in a POW camp and in the Marine Corps. Okay, you gotta.
You also had brothers that were drafted to the Korean War.
I had one brother.
One brother.
Mm-hmm. But he was a linesman, and he was working some island with miles from combat.
Tell us how you found out when you were going home.
Oh, okay. Well, periodically, like I said, they would assemble us and give us these lectures on communism and capitalism and the bourgeois and you name it. I can damn near recite you everything about the way the communists think, because they had a library. They brought in a library, and it was all literature from the third countries, like the people, Shanghai News, and you know what got me about that was that in the library they had communist papers that were being printed in the United States, like the Daily Worker, San Francisco Daily Worker, the New York Daily Worker. And I said, hell, we're fighting those guys, and they're letting them print their crap back home, And so that kind of got me. But what was the question again, my monkey?
How you found out you were going home, and what were the reactions of the general population there? The POWs. What was your reaction?
Well, we were always getting the Shanghai. Later on, they established a PA system, and they would play American music, big band music, and then the Chinese girl would come on speaking English and tell us about the news. Of course, it was always one-sided. You're gonna have to use your own imagination on that. And one day, she didn't come on no more. They were just putting on the music, and I told the guy, hey, what happened to the news? And the Chinese said, oh, the radio broke down. It kind of got suspicious to me. And then anyway, we had this get together. Oh yeah, and also we noticed the air war had kind of gone. There was no more air, or airplanes fighting each other and up there. And so then we were gathered together, and this time it was a real short talk. They just come out and say on July 27th, the peace agreement was agreed upon, and in In about 2 weeks, this whole camp will be evacuated. You will be returned to American control. Now you would think that, and when we got there, before we got there, we noticed cameras around, Chinese cameras and third country cameras. So I knew something was wrong, something different. And anyway, they expected us all jump up in the air and say, hey, But the guys, they kind of just look at each other. And we go like, what the hell's going on here? Yeah. And coming back, we still couldn't believe it because they'd say, what did he say? He said, we're going home. Is that right? Yeah. Well, how about this other crap that if you're volunteered to go? I don't know. I told him, I can't imagine anybody not wanting to volunteer to go home. But that's when later on we found out that 21 had stayed behind. 21 Americans.
They stayed behind.
Yes, they stayed behind. A lot of them were young. They got converted over, And one of them I know of, he went to China, and he went to Peking University, studied a lot of subjects, and including Chinese, which he became very fluent at. So 12 years later, get this, 12 years later, he submits an application to Harvard University in the Asian Affairs Department, asking for a job as a teacher in Chinese language. In the Asian Affairs Department, Harvard, they accepted him. And he came over here, and last time I heard, he was still up there teaching.
So he went back
It's a funny world. It's a funny world. All of them came home, except one. When he was over there and the war was going on, this and that, he applied for Polish, because Poland at the time was communist. He applied and he got the Polish citizenship, but in doing so, he lost his American, so he couldn't come back. These other guys never...
Was he an American?
Yeah. There was 21 of them. The Americans, just like you and me and this and that. Why? Well, some of them too were... they had collaborated quite a bit with the enemy, with the Chinese, and they were afraid to come back because they were afraid they'll get military justice, court martials and this and that. So they took their chances with the Chinese. And I guess also some were afraid that if they came back, the rest of the POW population was going to take care of them, do them in. So it was fear that motivated them to stay.
Was this were people that had gave in to the...
I would say yes. Uh-huh.
Like leaking information or...
No, they would sign petitions. They would make tape recordings, tape recordings saying how good the Chinese were. And these tape recordings were transmitted by third countries throughout the world. See? And the United States got a lot of them. So they were only hurting themselves when they start doing this kind of stuff. Or signing petitions what they would mail to the congressmen, so and so, to stop this unjust war. We're killing all the peace-loving people in Korea and stuff like that. So that was mostly the general trend of those people that were there. Mm-hmm.
What is your view now that you're looking at the Korean War?
Well,
what is your opinion about all this conflict? Do you think the United States had a legitimate reason to be there?
I don't know. I'm kind of different, I guess, because I think the United States has always supported losers. Like we supported the Shah of Iran, a loser. We supported South American dictators, losers. In South Korea, we always say the communists are going to do this, the communists are going to do that. Also, we always say, in the interest of national security, we do things. And I don't think, Korea wasn't too bad, but then if they're going to let you fight a war, go to war. Don't put strings attached to the guys. You can't do this. You can't bomb here. You can't fly on this altitude, you can't do this. And we were fighting under a lot of restrictions. See? So if you can't go to war, like in Iraq, we went to war, okay? We had the support of the people, the government, the congressmen, and all these other nations. And we went in there and we wiped them, just like that. We could have done the same thing in Korea if they would have let us, but they didn't. There was always that fear that the Chinese were going to come in and the Russians were going to come in, you know, and that we were going to have another Third World War. So we were very limited in how we fought the war. But then, as I think back, that's life, That's the way life is. Like you say, that's the way the cookie crumbles. But I don't know. One thing I found myself without any animosity toward anybody. I don't know why, but I just don't have animosity toward anybody. The more I see of people, the more I learn. I don't have animosity toward the Chinese, to the Koreans, to the Japanese, because I feel they were doing their job, just like I was. We didn't have no choice. We had to do what we had to do. And that's why I feel good. I feel good. Feel real good.
So when we heard the news, when did you actually departure from the?
Well, we got the news and we went back, and it was kind of a strange thing happened over the camp. Before, we used to go out there and play volleyball or gather around in groups, and this time everybody was in the huts talking. God, it's going to be nice to get back, that. Watching TV, eating steaks again, And we just went on and on and on. And up to the middle of the night, I guess we were still. And the next morning, they came and they read off some names. They assembled us and they read off some names. And the people that we call are leaving tomorrow. And they would call out your names, and big smile come to the guy's face if his name was called, So next morning the trucks were there, and they would jump into the trucks. And of course there was a lot of addresses exchange and names and information exchange. And then the next morning it would be the same thing. Okay, the war ended in 20. They started the repatriation on September 5th. I did not get repatriated till the 22nd, I think, of the same month. So you're talking about 70 days or something that I had to put up waiting for my name to call. And I was always worried because Aguirre, if you're Latin, you can pronounce it real good. But even the Hispanic, the Anglos have a hard time. Aguirre, Aguirre, blah, blah. No, the Chinese is going to have a harder time calling my name. And I always felt, God, I got to listen to this. Did he say Aguirre?
Might miss my boat.
Yeah, I might miss my ticket home, So I was always really paying attention. And I get pissed off if the guys would start talking, Anyway, they finally called my name. Then the next day, it was a funny part. Like, part of my life was gone, was missing, And I got up real early before the trucks came, and I walked over to the volleyball court where the guys had a lot of games, and we had a lot of fun there, and exercises and that. And I walked over to the river where we had slaughtered a lot of cows. And it was a big creek, really, and all these things were coming back to my mind, And then I saw a bunch of Koreans who were going to their fields to work and work their fields. And I told myself, oh, poor things, They got to stay here and endure this life. And who knows, in a couple of days or so, we'll be over there eating steaks and sleeping in warm beds and blah, blah. And these guys will still be suffering here for all this time. Kind of felt sorry for them. Yeah. But anyway, we got, the next day they picked us up, and they wouldn't let the Red Cross come in, the Chinese. But they did let them bring in a certain amount of supplies like Camel cigarettes and dial soap. I got that dial soap and I smelled it. It smells so nice. And then that's the only thing the Chinese did good for me. They made me quit smoking, because before we were either smoking the weed or smoking tobacco, just a plain tobacco, and it's very weak. And I took a little camel. Man, it made me sick. I started throwing up. And I tried it again and again. I said, well, hell with it. Who needs that stuff? So I got out of smoking. Anyway, we jumped on the trucks the next morning and we took off. And that's when I noticed it's fields and fields of marijuana. We were passing through fields of it. It's just growing out there wild. Not wild. They harvested. Yeah. Then we passed through one camp and we could, oh yeah, incidentally, our clothing was all blue, real dark blue, real dark blue. It was the same clothing they wore, but ours was blue. So theirs was kind of brown and ours was blue. And we passed by a camp there and some guys were on the road wearing blue clothes. We know they were prisoners. So practically everybody heaved the cigarettes at them, and the dial soap too.
They were what? American prisoners?
They were American prisoners in another camp. Yeah, they had about five, more than that. I don't know how many camps they had. The ones that we had was Camp 1, Camp 3, Camp 5, Camp 4, Camp 2. No, Camp 1 was mostly peons. Camp 3 was peons. Camp 2 was officers. Camp 4 was NCOs. And Camp 5 was a general mixture of UNP personnel, Turks, British, blah, blah. Yeah. Anyway, we we passed those guys, and then we came to this railroad station up in Mampojin, way up there, and they put us on flat cars. By this time, it's summer, nice and warm, July, or September. And we got us on walks cars, and then the train takes off, and we were going. Man, it was real nice because prior to this, all the villages were blackout. Everything was blackout at night. Now you see all these lights flickering all over. It was real nice, real nice. And, we, on the way down, we stopped at this big railroad station. There were some Chinese that had been released by the Americans, Chinese soldiers. And we kept looking at each other, kept looking at each other. And then some guy, then they said something and start pointing at us and start singing, And the guy said, hey, don't let the slopeheads put us down. Let's sing something. Yeah. Oh, beautiful for space and sky. And then when we left, everybody went like that to the Chinese, the prisoners. And then one guy said, goddamn slopeheads, if I'd have fragged them if I had a grenade. Because they used to call it either chink or a slopehead or a gook. One of the three. The chink was the Chinese, the gook was the Koreans, and the slopehead was Asiatics. I don't know why they call them slopeheads. I guess their heads kind of sloped. Anyway, we got down to Pyongyang, the capital, and from there they changed us over to trucks. From trucks they put us they took us to the DMZ, the demarcation zone, and we were on the north side and the Americans were on the south side. And then they put us on trucks and we stayed there, I think, overnight. Then they put us on trucks again and we came up to the edge of the DMZ. And I always remember this. A chopper, an American chopper came down and landed. There was an outpost there, pretty smartly dressed Koreans and Chinese. And they run to one of the Chinese ran to the helicopter, chopper, and the pilot hands him some papers. I guess it was the names of all the guys that were going to turn loose. And he got some papers. I guess it was the name of the guys that the Chinese were going to turn loose. So we went along, across the DMZ. There's a bridge there, they called it the Bridge of No Return. It was right in the center of DMZ. And we got off the trucks, and there was some MPs waiting for us, military police. They were calling off names. Yeah, Aguirre, yeah. Okay, you guys get in that ambulance over there. We got on some ambulance, and then they took us down to Freedom Village. Freedom Village was a village that was established for that purpose of handling the repatriates. And we got to the village, and the first thing they did was they took all our old clothes away. They gave us clean dungarees, and then they were shooting DDT up your sleeves, trying to kill whatever lice, if there was any, up your legs, down here, and anyway, then he asked you what you wanted, if you wanted to go see the chapel, You say, yeah, it won't hurt. You go to chapel and you let yourself go, Then I just say, well, lunchtime, it says, 300 or whatever. And you go to the mess hall and they ask you what you want to eat, I don't recall what I ate, but I know I wanted ice cream. So I had my fill of ice cream. Then they took me to see the Commandant of the Marine Corps, General Cates. And I damn near forgot to salute the guy, because I've been so used to not saluting nobody, But I remember. And he asked me, how was it? And I said, pretty rough, General. And he said, well, you above everybody who knows how important freedom is, and blah, 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 And anyway, after I got through there, they took us out to the pad. It was a chopper pad, and they put us on this chopper, and we flew to Incheon. And there we were confined to this building with a big fence around it. We couldn't interface with no prisoners until we got debriefed. We couldn't interface with non-POWs. Okay? We could interface with our own. And then coming aboard ship, it was the same thing. We were restricted. We couldn't talk to the general, the other passengers, ship's crew or whatever, And then the interrogation started, and they started interrogating us, which I expected, Again, they interrogated, God, I have a couple of dozers there on some guys. They're that thick. I don't know if you would be interested in seeing one of these days.
Dozers meaning?
Dozers meaning bookwork, paperwork that was piled up, compiling all their information that they gave. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, anyway, they made one for everybody, and just lately, some act went to the Freedom of Speech Act or something, and they were able to get these dozers back. Information, yeah. And anyway, they were building all this up, but the thing that really shocked me, when they started to interrogate us, they asked us if we wanted to plead the Fifth Amendment. The what? You gotta be kidding, man. No, we're not kidding. What you say may be held against you, so if you want to plead the Fifth Amendment, you can do it now, And I didn't have nothing to fear, So I said, oh, okay. But you wouldn't think that was happening. I mean, here we got out of one goddamn mess and we're going into another. And anyway, we got interrogated again and again and again. Then we finally made it home. And the reason they didn't fly us home was for that purpose, to interrogate us aboard ship, which would take maybe 12 days. So they did a real thorough job on us, interrogating.
What kind of information were they looking for?
Well, they have a questionnaire. It's got a little bit of the military, a little bit of the POW life. Also, how was the terrain where you were at? Did you see any guns? Anti-guns, or a lot of questions like that. Maybe someday you can see them. I got it right there. And they built up a big dozer on you. Mm-hmm. Then we got home. We got to San Francisco. We got paid.
Let me excuse me for a second. In your opinion, what do you think? What kind of information were they looking for?
They were trying to find out if we had become communists. You must forget that they were during the McCarthy era. Mm-hmm. If you know your history, McCarthy era, he thought everybody was a communist. We have communists in Congress. We have communists here. We have communists in Hollywood. So based on that, I think that's what really did it. Now, if you think we have communists in Hollywood, how about these guys? They've been exposed and indoctrinated to all this communist ideology. Surely there must be some communists among them, Mm-hmm. So their purpose was to define or find out which one of us had become lean toward communism and how much. And I think that was the whole purpose of that interrogation. Because they asked us more about things that were not pertinent to a military than to our own personal lives, Anyway, we got to San Francisco, and that's just, you got that kind of feeling of some resentment, because got to San Francisco, we got paid. But here we've been captured 3 years, okay? And we're entitled to a month's pay for each year you're captured. You know what they call a month leave, a leave. Okay. So they didn't pay us for those leaves, And I thought the paymaster, hey, how come we didn't get paid for this? He said, you know what the rules are, Sergeant? If you don't take it, you lose it. I said, what the hell am I supposed to do? Go tell the Chinese to let me go so I can take my leave and not lose it? He said, I don't make the rules. I just follow them. So much for that. Anyway, about 45 years later, they come around and give every POW $300 for that unused leave. Now it was a little consolation for us that we were alive, but how about all those guys that died during the 45 years? It didn't help them out at all, So I guess that's part of life, You just got to take the good with the bad. But that's how I got home. And after I got home, I was go ahead.
You say you were you were in San Francisco. You got your pay, and then you went home. Your family was waiting for you.
No. I got the plane in San Francisco and changed planes in L.A. and I got down there. My feeling was this: I'm going to sow my oats out before I get home. Huh? I'm going to go down to Tijuana, get stinko drunk, and just let it all out, Anyway, we got, then later on in the morning, I'll come home, Anyway, nobody's expecting me. What the hell? Doesn't make any difference if I come home tonight or in the morning. But then I got off the plane and my brother and another guy were waiting for me. Not the whole family, just them. And we came home and the family was asleep. And that was about it. The next day, like I had never left.
And how was it to readjust yourself to?
Well, you can't help but think what happened to you. And I think the worst thing for me was when I found myself alone on a plane and I didn't have no escorts, military escorts, nobody around. And I saw all these passengers, the women, how they had the makeup. I thought they were all beautiful, Yeah, after living with men all this time, scrawny men, And I felt it's something that you have to live through it to appreciate it. And I got home. I got the plane over there and got home. And then later on, one of the buddies said, well, Andy, if you still want to go to Tijuana, we'll go. So we went that night, and I don't know, for some reason, I just couldn't find myself to enjoy it. I kept thinking of the guys that were left behind. I kept thinking the guys I had got separated because you got to remember, you live with these guys all this time. Buddies, we suffered together, got sick together and did this together and get that thing. So they become part of you, And so now it's time for them to go their way and for you to go your way. And this makes you real sad. Real sad. Because you're losing guys that understand you, the guys that you can communicate with, relate with, and now you're being put in a place where people don't understand you. They don't understand your experience or nothing. So you kind of withdraw into yourself. You withdraw and you try to, I don't know, you just try to keep on living. But then you tell yourself, hey, this can't last. You got to bear down. And you're starting to feel sorry for yourself. Like I say, self-pity. Now you preach it, now practice it. So then that's when I started working right away. So I wouldn't have time to linger thinking about it. I went back to my job, was waiting for me, General Dynamics. And I started going to school. And I got married right away, 11 days after I got my present wife. 11 days. And so all these things combined kept my mind busy. Of course, I still would think about Korea and all the guys and this and that. And then this went on for a long period. Then about 10 years ago, I found out that we had an association of Korean ex-POWs, and I was not aware of it. So I made reservations to attend the next one. I went in St. Louis, Missouri, and I met most of the guys that I was with.
You were there?
Yeah, and that was like therapy. We got together and we hugged and we joked and laughed and all stuff like that. It was real good. Good therapy. Good therapy. Wonderful therapy. So now every year we get together. Last year we had it in Spokane. This year we're going to have it in Louisville, Kentucky. But yes, you do feel bad, and you don't know why you feel bad. I used to get up at night and I just couldn't sleep. I go out in the dark and cry. I'd, break down. And you don't know why. Your wife can't help you because she doesn't know why either. You're feeling this way. Just a despondent, melancholy mood comes over and it overcomes you. So you cry and you cry, you try to let it out. But that's only by yourself. You don't let people know that because you're a macho. You're a Marine, You're not supposed to be doing that.
Is that one of the elements that motivated you to write?
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, that's why I call it surviving the odds, because that's about what it was. You're facing these odds all the time. You're surviving.
How many children did you have?
Two.
2 children?
I had a boy and a girl. My boy is now, he's been about 16 years at the San Diego Police Department. Mm-hmm. He's a sergeant. And my daughter, she lives in Colorado Springs. My son only had 2 kids. My daughter had 1, so I only got 3 grandchildren. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's about it. I lived in Colorado for 8 years, and I really loved it. Because after I retired, I got tired of all this confusion and honk and alarms and ice cream men going by, airplanes going by, So I said, I'm going to go find me some place where I can relax and think for myself. So I sold my place here, went to Colorado, and when I sold it here, I was able to buy 5 acres and a 3-bedroom home over there in the forest. In the forest. Mm-hmm. And in the forest, it's beautiful. Because we were in a pine grove, and you see blue jays coming down. I used to feed them. Squirrels come down. We even had some deer in the back, and we had a creek where they come down, drink water. And we had a lot of foxes, of course. And it was just beautiful. The change in seasons. It would snow. Who cares? Put another log in the fire. In spring or summer, we had to change the seasons, and I loved it. Because I felt that each change of season was like a challenge to me, like winter. Okay, yeah, it's a challenge. We have to live through the sun, and we're going to do it. And then the rainy season comes, but it was altogether a different life. I really loved it. Then I got this heart attack, and I had a triple bypass. Then later on, I had a defibrillator or a pacemaker, and the doctor at the time told me I was pretty bad, and I could go. So I told my wife, we better move to San Diego, because if I go, you'll have your family and my family to help you out. Over here, you're all alone. My daughter lived 3 miles. You can't compare one person with a bunch of them. So that's why we came back here. Otherwise, I'd have still been up there. I used to love it. Snow, winter, I'd jump on my tractor and get that snow plow and just plow it.
When World War II started, Pearl Harbor got bombed. Where were you at?
I
The first
I heard it over the radio. Well, we didn't have a radio in my house, but there was a neighbor that we used to go listen to the radio. Radio was a big thing in those days, like the Shadow Knows, blah, 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 the Green Hornet, and God knows how many other programs. Anyway, I went to see my buddy, and he said, hey, I think we're at war. Why? The radio said that they bombed Pearl Harbor yesterday. But I was still a kid, the teenager. Who cares? Pearl Harbor, it's in another world. And that's how I found out about it.
So you got out and continued in the military. you went back to work for you went back to your old job, right?
Right, General Dynamics. After I came back from Korea.
And did you you mentioned you also went to college. Did you get a college degree?
No, I never did make it, but because they dropped the major on me. And you know, sometimes they drop majors on you, you can't complete it. You're too far gone in it. By the time you get another one, you don't. Then my GI Bill ran out. They were paying me $90 a month and tuition to go to school. It ran out. But I managed to go back to General Dynamics, and like I said, I started off as a painter. Then the next step up was a machinist. And it helped me at the time because I was taking math, trigonometry, and stuff like that. So you had to figure out all your cuts and stuff. So that really helped me out. Then later on, as a machinist, we had our X-ray lab, industrial X-ray, and they needed help over there. And I told the guy, hey, the boss, I only work half a day here. I finish in the morning, and the rest of the day I have to watch out for you because you might not catch me working. Why don't you make it easier on yourself and me and send me over there to the X-ray guys? I'll help them out. I bring big parts in, position them to get them X-rayed. Well, I started doing that, and next thing you know, I'm shooting. Shooting means taking radiographic pictures. And after that, I started reading. What the reading, that means you look at the film, little defect there, you mark it, and all this stuff and that. So I got pretty good at it. Then they came around and said, Andy, you want to go into process control? I said, what's process control? Well, we control the process, painting, welding, adhesive applications, any process we do. And I said, you think I can do it? He said, oh, yeah, you can do it. No problem. He said, I'll help you. And so I went into process control, and they put me in, I think my first big job was taking care of the plating tanks. We did a lot of plating, silver plating, anodized, iodine, this and that. Now my job as a salary guy was to make sure that the concentration of all these tanks were within level, was the working level. If they got out of control, dump the tank, refill it. It was up to me to put the orders in, and that little math I learned helped me out. I didn't have to be a chemist because we had regular chemists that would come in and take out samples. Then he would mail me the report and he'd say, oh, tank down is tank 8 with nitric acid is kind of down a little bit. Okay, let's bring it up to strength. And you'd figure it out. You say, then you give a dispatch to maintenance, and maintenance will go over there and put the nitric acid in or hydrochloric or whatever it was. So that was one of my first jobs as a process control. Then later on, I got I had to paint, and then I got into the certification and qualification of furnaces. We used to have big furnaces, 40 foot by maybe 8 foot wide, maybe 8 foot high, and we'd run parts in there. And my job was to make sure that the temperature was uniform throughout the whole thing. We didn't have a cold spot here, a hot spot there, because if we do that, then the parts that are on this side, they're not going to get the required temperature. They were going to be soft or hard, while this other one, we wanted everything to be uniform. So I had that for a while, and it was kind of interesting. So it took a lot of wiring and my what they call those thermocouples. And after that, I had so many jobs. Oh yeah, I went into certification. I was real lucky, real lucky. And the reason it wasn't all luck. The boss, he kept going up, and he was bringing me right with him. He kept going up, and I was coming right behind him. He'd pull me out. Come over here. Come over here. Come work with me. Come work with me. Yeah, I had the certification program of the whole General Dynamics, including the areas in Vanderburg and Cape Canaveral. All the people, But the certification program is that if you're going to be a welder, you got to we have to make sure that you know how to weld. Okay, so first off, we accept your application, then we give you a bunch of joints, weld joints, configuration that you got to weld. Now, after you weld them, we take them to X-ray, make sure that they pass X-ray. Then after they pass X-ray, then we take them to the metallurgical lab, which we did ourselves. We cut them, polish them, then cut a section off and look at our microscope. We did a lot of that with resistance welding, which is 2 sheets of metal and they fly, Then the weld starts forming between the sheets going out like that. And it'll form a nugget. So we cut the section off and we check the nugget for, that's after it comes through X-ray. After it comes through X-ray, we check it for a nugget diameter, make sure the nugget is strong enough, and penetration, make sure that the weld has penetrated enough into that. And it's pretty realistic, pretty nice, real nice. I was getting an education as I was doing it. My job was also to train all these new inspectors coming in, now how to help them interpret test results and how to conduct tests also. Like how to conduct them, how to make the metallurgical samples. It was real interesting.
Did you retire from there?
Mm-hmm. I retired in 1989. I had 63 years, and I was 63 years old at the time.
When you retired?
Mm-hmm.
Any other, besides your professional job, and were you involved in any other organization, a social or political organization?
No, outside of veterans organizations, no, I never got into any of that.
So you were, what organizations did you, were you part of?
Well, I was, they got a chosen few. I don't know if you recall, a couple of weeks, about a month ago, they had a big reunion in San Diego. That was all the survivors from the chosen reservoir. We were there. Then I joined, when I went to Colorado Springs, I joined Veterans of Foreign Wars. But that was mostly for social, because they had a big floor, and every Friday they'd have a dance and dinner and stuff like that, So I joined them, and also to try to interface with people, Yeah, I found out that if you don't interface with people, you lose knowledge. Because you go there, you attend a function, and this guy will tell you this, and that guy will tell you that, this guy will tell you this, Then I joined, when I was up there, I joined the American XPOWs organization. Great bunch of guys. And they were, when I got up there and I joined them, they were calling me every week to find out how I was doing, if I needed any help financially or establishing myself, my residence and stuff like that. Great bunch of guys. Yeah, you don't meet too many guys like that. All these other organizations like the Veterans of Foreign Wars, American Legion, I don't know. I don't feel good because they're all a bunch of heroes. Oh yeah, in the war I did this, in the war I did that. And, I don't know. I know they could probably never put up with what I went through. So their stuff is so minimal that I lose interest. You can see why I would. But yet with the POWs, I mean, we're tight. We're a tight group.
Looking back at your experiences and at the war effort, your the time that you spent in the camps, and obviously you had a really interesting life. What kind of message would you give to today's youth?
Well, I would recommend that when you get out of high school, you don't have any, unless you're lucky enough to get a job or you have to, if you don't have, for monetary reasons, you can't go to college, then you got to do something. You just can't lay around and drift. By drifting, I mean you're just going with the flow and you got no goals, no purpose. I would recommend they all go to the military, not only to the Marine Corps, but Air Force or somebody like that, because the 2 years or 4 years that you spend in there, you're going to gain quite a bit. You don't realize it. You're going to learn how to interface with different people from different cultures, and you're going to learn self-discipline, which you will need in life later on. And there's a lot of good things that come out of it. So I would suggest everybody go to the military, or the guys that are drifting, go to the military. The military will help you out. When you get out, you might get a grant for go to college or something like that. You know? You have some basis to build on. This way, drifting, you have no basis. I mean, you go see the neighbor or jump in this car and you go to the shore or something. That doesn't help you later on in life, baby. You know, you got to have goals. Got to have goals. And once you find a goal, stick with it until you reach your goal.
Right.
That's about what I think.
Great. Well, once again, we want to thank you for your time.
Mm-hmm.
This interview has been really great.
Thank you.
And thanks again.
Okay, my pleasure.
Good. We went a little bit past 2